Chapter 2705. No one in the Yun family will surrender without a fight, Yun Yanghao said lightly, but his words were powerful. Ling Han laughed loudly. Though the Yun clan's way of doing things is not very good, but as a person, you are still somewhat acceptable. Let's fight. Yun Yanghao soared into the sky. Now that Ling Han's cultivation had improved, if the two fought, the impact of the shockwaves would be too terrifying. They had to get away from the Yun family. Otherwise, the Yun family would have to be rebuilt. Ling Han also shot up into the sky with a leap. The two of them didn't waste any words and immediately started fighting. They fought back and forth. In terms of conventional combat power, neither of them was at a disadvantage. But everyone knew that Yun Yanghao had lost, and he had suffered a crushing defeat. What was the difference between a quasi-celestial master and an immortal king? This should have been an absolute suppression. But now, not only was it not a suppression, it was even a draw. Yun Yanghao roared and used all kinds of secret arts. He was already at the peak of the immortal Tao, and all kinds of rules worked at his will. The great Tao came one after another, turning into all kinds of weapons to attack Ling Han. Ling Han wasn't afraid at all. He also stood at the peak of the immortal Tao. In terms of rules, not only would he not lose to Yun Yanghao, but he also wouldn't lose to a 7-step celestial master. This was already the limit of rules. If you draw rules, then I'll draw too. Who's afraid of who? Countless stars fell, turning into countless meteors that streaked across the world. These were all star stones, and some of them even contained immortal metal. Countless people would come here in the future to search for treasures. If they could find immortal metal, they would naturally become rich overnight. However, right now, everyone could only flee in panic. A myriad of stars fell from the sky, and some of them even had hints of the martial wills of the two great experts entwined around them. If they were to collide with them, they would definitely die immediately. Bang! Ling Han and Yun Yanghao exchanged a blow and were both sent flying 100 miles away. However, upon closer inspection, one would find that Ling Han had actually retreated about 100 feet less than Yun Yanghao. This kind of advantage was almost negligible, but it proved that Ling Han's battle prowess was indeed stronger than Yun Yanghao's, even if it was only slightly stronger. Yun Yanghao was filled with shock and disbelief. He had already guessed that after Ling Han stepped into the 9th heaven, his battle prowess might not lose to him, but it was still unacceptable for him to be this strong. He had actually been surpassed by a 9th firmament immortal king. If it wasn't because of an Empyrean treasure artifact, then it was because their battle prowess was inferior. He borrowed this momentum to quickly retreat. Then he displayed the heavenly deity precious technique, extracting strands of the origin world's essence power, condensing it into a golden arrow. This was the Yun family's strongest mystic technique. If the Yun family's old ancestor used it, he could kill a 2nd-step heavenly venerate with one arrow. Ling Han did not dodge. Instead, he faced it head-on. However, he did not dare to be careless. He activated the 5-elemental lightning art and covered his fist. Instantly, 9-colored lightning flashed. Go! Yun Yanghao shot out an arrow. This arrow was indescribably fast. Ling Han punched out, smashing onto the golden arrow. Instantly, brilliant light was like fireworks. Even the infinitely distant stars fell one after another, completely unable to withstand the battle prowess of a pseudo-heavenly venerate. It should be known that after releasing their ultimate moves, their battle prowess instantly soared to the level of a heavenly venerate. How terrifying was that? If they were in the celestial realm, heaven and earth would not tolerate it, and they would be struck by lightning. Ling Han roared. His fighting spirit was boiling, and he accelerated towards Yun Yanghao, his fists swinging angrily. He rained blows. Yun Yanghao was both angry and shocked. If Ling Han used the divine demon sword, then he would be willing to admit defeat. After all, there was nothing wrong with losing to an Empyrean treasure artifact. But they were both fighting with their own strength. If he still lost to a 9th firmament immortal, then how could he endure it? But helplessly, under Ling Han's thunderous attacks, he was actually somewhat powerless. How was this possible? He was a pseudo-heavenly venerate, and his body had been tempered by the intrinsic power of the origin world. His body technique was astonishing. For example, a ninth firmament celestial king could only launch 10,000 attacks in a breath's time, but he could launch 1 million attacks. Thus, even if their power was the same, he could use such concentrated attacks to crush all celestial kings. But what about Ling Han? He could launch 1 million attacks. Not just one more attack, but over time, his advantage would slowly accumulate and finally form a qualitative change. Could it be believed that his a pseudo-heavenly venerates body technique was actually inferior to Ling Han's? This was natural. Ling Han could extract hollow energy to temper his body even before he had become a celestial king. In terms of cultivation level, he was far superior to Yun Yanghao. Moreover, hollow energy was stronger than the unique power of the plane, so it naturally made Ling Han's body technique superior. Peng, peng, peng. In the continuous exchange of blows, there was finally a fist that Yun Yanghao could not block, and it landed on his body, causing a terrifying blow. Impossible! Heavens! Seeing this scene, everyone in the Yun clan did not dare to believe it. Some people even clutched their heads, kneeling on the ground and crying. Their pseudo-heavenly venerate was about to be defeated by a ninth heaven celestial king. This was a great humiliation, and it could not be any more humiliating. The longer the battle went on, the more attacks Yun Yanghao received. His face, body, and legs were all punched, causing his body to become deformed, and many pits appeared. This kind of battle did not have the slightest bit of exaggeration. Every attack was a clash of absolute power, and whoever could not keep up with speed and power would be at a disadvantage, and this disadvantage would increase endlessly. If it was not for the fact that those below Celestial King tier could not see the battle clearly, even Mountain River tier cultivators could easily judge that Yun Yanghao's defeat was only a matter of time. The Celestial King of the Yun clan seemed to have lost his soul, and this was something they could not accept no matter what. Yun Yanghao fought, and did not retreat. If he fled, then Ling Han would only be slightly stronger than him, and could not possibly stop him. Even if he used the divine demon sword, it might be barely enough. However, he continued to fight to the death, and this was a case of the brave winning. He continued to be injured, and his injuries continued to accumulate. When they reached a certain point, he finally lost. He fell from the sky, and crashed heavily into the ground, creating a large pit. Ancestor Hao. The celestial kings of the Yun clan swarmed over like a swarm of bees. When they discovered that although Yun Yanghao's injuries were extremely severe, it was not life-threatening, they breathed a sigh of relief. Ling Han also descended from the sky, his aura surging like the tide. Although the members of the Yun clan hated Ling Han to the bone, under his aura, no one dared to make a sound, and could only tremble with fear. "Old Black, let's go and raid the clan," Ling Han said to the large black dog. "Okay." The large black dog was so happy that he was about to blossom. He had waited for this day for countless years. They entered the Yun clan, and openly rummaged through the grounds, almost digging 3 feet into the ground. However, no one in the Yun clan dared to stop them, and they did not even dare to reprimand them. They could only watch as the most precious accumulation of several epochs of the clan was robbed clean. This brat's momentum has already been formed, and no one can stop him. The celestial kings of the Yun clan all sighed, and were filled with regret. Why did they go against Ling Han in the first place? Although this guy held a grudge, he never took the initiative to bully others. If they had to blame someone, they could only blame themselves. Chapter 2706. After looting the Yun clan's most precious items, Ling Han was extremely satisfied. Firstly, it was on the material level. The Yun clan indeed had many treasures. Secondly, it was on the spiritual level. After spending more than 200,000 years, he had finally gnawed down on the tough bone that was the Yun clan. This made him feel very comfortable. There were 2 more clans left, the Situ clan and the Wu clan. When Ling Han arrived, these 2 clans did not resist at all. They took the initiative to open their treasure vaults for Ling Han to choose. As a celestial venerable force, they could not abandon their clans and flee. However, there was no celestial venerable force in their clans now, and they could not stop Ling Han at all. Thus, they just generously allowed Ling Han to choose. In their eyes, even if they were humiliated now, as long as the Grand Elder returned, he could suppress Ling Han with a flip of his hand. A true man knows when to yield and when to stand tall. Ling Han had no intention of offending those third and fourth step celestial venerables. It was fine to just loot their possessions, but not to kill them. After all, these forces had only wanted to capture him and force him to concoct pills. He was still quite reasonable. After looting the last Wu clan, Ling Han and the others began to divide the treasures. The harvest was astonishing, and even Vale was slightly moved. What a pity! I still lack one treasure, and I can refine the indestructible immortal gold body. Ling Han felt that it was a pity. The 9 great clans' treasures were too astonishing. They actually only needed a little more to gather the materials for him to cultivate the indestructible immortal gold body. I still lack the Scarlet Flame Heavenly Fire Stone, the large black dog said. Scarlet Flame Heavenly Fire Stone, Scarlet Flame Heavenly Fire Stone. Ling Han muttered a few times, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Du Shi and the others invited me to Mount Broken Cloud. That place is filled with danger. It's said that it's a naturally formed mystic land. Even 9th Heaven celestial kings have to be careful. I've already broken through to the 9th Heaven, so I originally did not need to go. But that place is filled with flames. Would there be Scarlet Flame Heavenly Fire Stone there? The large black dog immediately jumped up. Of course, as long as we obtain Scarlet Flame Heavenly Fire Stone, we can cultivate the indestructible immortal gold body. Then even pseudo-heavenly venerables would attack us, and we would be fine. Damn, if I meet Tianxing again, I'll hang him up and beat him until he calls me grandpa. Ling Han nodded slowly. Since he was only one step away from cultivating the indestructible immortal gold body, he could temporarily postpone his trip to the outer region's battlefield and first push the indestructible heaven scroll to another level. They set off for Mount Puyun. After being here for so many years, Vale had already collected all the information he could about the Frosty Plain. Hence, it was naturally a piece of cake for him to find a way to the Broken Cloud volcano. On the contrary, they were too far away from that place. It took them 2 years to finally arrive at that place. Mount Puyun lived up to its name. A mountain peak pierced through the clouds, and the peak was still erupting lava, causing the entire mountain to be dyed crimson red. Even from afar, one could feel a wave of heat surging over, threatening to set one ablaze. Thankfully, both Ling Han and the large black dog had cultivated the indestructible immortal king body, which was only slightly inferior to divine metal. Meanwhile, Vale was even more special. His body was not very strong, but it had the indestructible characteristic of divine metal. No matter how it was damaged, it could recover. From this aspect, it could be said that his ability to survive was stronger than Ling Han and the large black dog. Grandpa Dog hates this kind of ghastly place. Even my fur is about to fall off, the large black dog said in disgust. When did you lose your iron underwear? Ling Han asked. What? Are you coveting Grandpa Dog's butt? The large black dog pretended to turn pale with fright and used his 2 front paws to cover his iron underwear. Hee hee. Ling Han could not be bothered to reply. They ascended the mountain, and the waves of heat surged over. The clothes on their bodies immediately became scorched. The waves of heat were extremely frightening, reaching the limit of regulations. It was as if a peak stage 9th Heaven elite was attacking with the regulations of fire at all times, and it was naturally a headache. Moreover, this attack was not a strength-type attack, but one that was smelted with regulations. Even divine metal would soften, and could be beaten into shape. Celestial tools could be forged here. Facing such high temperatures, Ling Han and the large black dog had to open up their source shields and resist with regulations. Vale, on the other hand, did not seem like a human at all. He turned into a puddle of mud, rolling on the ground. A very sticky battle soldier. Should we go find Du Shi and the others first? Ling Han pondered. They had been here for more than 200,000 years, and should have some understanding of this place. Perhaps they would know where the scarlet flame heavenly fire or could be found. Let's go. It's better than us wandering around here, the large black dog said. The regulations here were extremely dense, and the entire volcano was like countless ninth heaven celestial kings stacked on top of each other. Even Vale could not pass through and find the location of the scarlet flame heavenly fire Oregon. Thus, they began to search in the mountains. This mountain was astonishingly large, and crimson lava flowed everywhere on the ground. There were pitifully few safe areas. Even if it was a safe area, it was still extremely pressuring for ninth heaven celestial kings. Waves of flames surged, and if they relaxed even slightly, they could ignite and turn into a fireball. If that was all, then they only had to be a little more careful. More importantly, there were actually living beings in this surging lava. When Ling Han and the others had walked a certain distance, they saw lava splatter and splash toward them. They thought that this was a natural phenomenon, so they did not take it seriously at first. However, they had only taken a few steps when another wave of lava splashed toward them. They dodged it again. Fuck, what the hell is going on? Is there something under the lava attacking me? The large black dog shouted. This time, it was a coincidence, but how could there be so many coincidences? He struck out with his palm, and the force of his attack instantly caused the lava to explode and splash out like water. Ling Han immediately realized that there was actually a fish in the lava. It waved its tail, and instantly, another wave of lava splashed toward Ling Han and the others. Stinky fish, Grandpa Dog is going to cook you and eat you. The large black dog was furious. He was filled with apprehension toward the lava, and did not dare to directly touch it. Thus, he drew upon the Great Tao, wanting to use it as a hand to grab this fish. When the hand of the Great Tao grabbed onto the fish, it immediately burst into flames, and a large hole was formed. The large fish fell into the lava, and with a wave of its tail, it immediately dove into the bottom of the lava. It could not reach it, and it could not sense it either. The large black dog howled in anger. It had always been him taking advantage of others, but now he had been ambushed by a fish, yet he had still managed to escape. This was naturally extremely displeased. Ling Han chuckled and said, "It comes and goes in flames, and you still want to cook it?" The large black dog bared his teeth. This fire fish was formed from the fusion of supreme regulations of flames, so what was the point of using fire to cook it? No, it has angered me, so Grandpa Dog is going to eat it no matter what. He didn't care anymore. When it comes out, will we be able to capture it? I'm also quite curious, Ling Han said. It was not rare for regulations to take human form, but what was rare was that this fish seemed to have its own consciousness. This was extraordinary. All right. The large black dog rubbed his claws together. If he and Ling Han joined forces, he was sure that even a being that had taken human form from the supreme regulations would have no choice but to be captured. What's that? Ling Han looked into the distance, only to see that the lava that had initially been slowly flowing had suddenly become violent. A huge wave surged, and was currently sweeping in their direction. Chapter 2707. The lava had originally been flowing smoothly, so how could a wave suddenly appear? Ling Han frowned. The lava had originally been flowing smoothly, so how could a wave suddenly appear? Previously, it was a fish that had caused the lava to splash toward them, and now, it was a wave that was attacking them. If one said that this was naturally formed, Ling Han wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. Retreat first. Ling Han grabbed Tile, and their figures rose and fell, jumping away from the direction where the wave had come from. However, it was as if the wave had eyes of its own, and it actually changed direction, rushing toward them again. The large black dog still wanted to dodge, but Ling Han shook his head. Don't dodge, come and fight. If they rose up, the waves of heat intertwined in the air, and it was actually even hotter than standing in a place without lava. Boom, the wave of lava surged toward them. When they got closer, they could actually see that there were actually fish leaping about in the wave. This wave was actually caused by a large number of fish. Ling Han humphed and said, I knew it would be like this. He clenched his fist and punched toward the wave. A terrifying fist force surged over. This was an attack at the pseudo-celestial venerable tier. The wave instantly exploded, and at least 100 or so firefish were all sent flying into the sky. Some directly exploded into sparks, but most of them still landed back down unscathed. Ling Han stretched out his hand again and instantly caught 3 firefish. He didn't directly use his hand to catch them because he could feel the waves of heat emitted by the firefish, and this was enough to destroy even his defenses. This smelly bug, continue being arrogant. The large black dog laughed loudly. Faced with the wave just now, even a celestial king at the peak stage of the 9th heaven could only flee in a sorry state. This was because the attack he had unleashed was completely unable to do anything to this kind of wave, and its power was directly melted by the regulations of fire. But the attack of a pseudo-celestial venerable was different. The firefish all fell back into the lava. When they discovered that one of their companions had fallen into the enemy's hands, they immediately launched another attack. They twitched their tails, splashing out crimson-red lava, and attacked Ling Han. Ling Han punched again, and a crushing force surged forth. Pung! The lava instantly tumbled backwards, and at least a dozen or so firefish were shattered into pieces. These flaming fishes were finally afraid. The remaining ones quickly shook their tails and fled without a trace. "What on earth is this?" the large black dog asked as he scooted over. Ling Han was also observing. These 3 flaming fishes were indeed formed from fire elemental laws. Ling Han could do it as well. All he had to do was extract the fire elemental laws. However, to give them intelligence was too difficult. Perhaps only the heavens and earth had the ability to do so. He was extremely daring and tried to swallow one of the fire fish in one gulp. After it entered his stomach, it turned into a ball of fire and melted his internal organs and lungs. Ling Han forcefully suppressed it, using his supreme strength to grind away the flame laws bit by bit. He sighed. He had refined a flaming fish, but there were no benefits at all. "Forget it, Grandpa Dog doesn't want to eat it either." The large black dog shook his head and retreated a few steps. Ling Han extinguished the remaining 2 flaming fishes. If it was just 1 or 2, he naturally wouldn't be afraid. However, if they were in groups and their numbers reached a certain level, even he would have to frown. It was like a pseudo-celestial tier celestial king being surrounded and attacked by 100 celestial kings at the peak stage of the 9th heaven. If he didn't kill his way out of the encirclement as soon as possible, only death would await him. This really is a perilous place. Ling Han nodded. If it weren't for the fact that he possessed the power of a pseudo-celestial tier celestial king, any other 9th heaven celestial king would have no choice but to retreat. They had only just entered the region of the volcano, so who knew how many more dangers there were inside? They continued to advance, but their speed wasn't fast. This place was also filled with traps. They could clearly see a protruding rock, but if they stepped on it, it would immediately explode and splash out boiling lava. It was impossible to guard against. Ling Han was fine, but the large black dog was in a much worse state. He was constantly jumping around. This volcano was astonishingly large to begin with, and coupled with the fact that their speed was restricted, they could only search a small region after a day. Naturally, they weren't lucky enough to coincidentally find Du Shi and the others. Moreover, the 3 of them might not have moved together. If there was only one of them, it would be even more difficult to find them. They rested for a while, and then continued their search the next day. 3 days, 4 days. They continued to search, and they explored this volcano bit by bit. However, after a dozen or so days, they only managed to search about 1% of the region, and they didn't find anything. They were very patient. In the first place, they had to be very careful when exploring such a perilous place. There weren't just fire fishes here. There were also some other random things here, such as fire crabs, fire scorpions, and crimson fire chains. These were all formed from the supreme regulations of fire. Although their power was very weak, their comprehension of regulations had reached the pinnacle. Even a 9th heaven celestial king would be able to injure 1,000 enemies and injure 800 enemies if they attacked them. However, in front of a celestial king like Ling Han, who possessed the power of a pseudo-celestial tier celestial king, these things were nothing more than trash. In the blink of an eye, Half a year passed. Ling Han and the others had already explored about 1/6 of the volcano, but they still didn't find any clues. Another 2 days passed. Ling Han and the large black dog pricked up their ears at almost the same time. Meanwhile, Vale looked to the left and 2 rays of green light shot out from his eyes. Very soon, they saw a person flying over from afar. However, he didn't run directly toward them. Obviously, he didn't run over because he had discovered the 3 of them. Of course, he wasn't moving in a straight line. The floating rocks here were completely irregular, so they moved in a snake-like pattern. "Dushi?" Ling Han blurted out. He was slightly surprised. They had searched for half a year without finding any traces, but they had found him without any effort at all. However, he quickly furrowed his brows. This was because Du Shi wasn't alone. There was a string of people chasing after him. He was being hunted. Ling Han focused his gaze, and his killing intent involuntarily blazed wildly. He recognized one of the people chasing after Du Shi. Green Ghost Celestial King, the leader of the Ghost King capital in the Cemetery of Celestial Kings. He was actually here. Previously, Zhou Heng had swept through the Cemetery of the Immortal King, but he hadn't found Huang Yu and those Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings. They had long gone missing. Now that Green Ghost Immortal King had appeared here, what did this mean? It was extremely likely that after Huang Yu had led those Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings out of the Cemetery of the Immortal King, he had hidden in this volcano. This place was covered by the supreme laws. If a celestial venerable didn't personally come, it would be impossible for him to penetrate the laws and discover what was hidden under the cover of lava. Moreover, to others, this was a dangerous place, but to tens of thousands of Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings, if they joined forces, how could they not deal with those fire fish and fire scorpions? After so many years, Huang Yu had most likely already completed his mission. Green Ghost Immortal King and the others had all become pseudo-celestial venerables. Otherwise, with Du Shi's strength, how could he have been chased by over a dozen celestial kings so miserably? "Brother Du!" Ling Han let out a long roar and sent a voice transmission to Du Shi with his divine sense. "Ling Han!" Du Shi was both surprised and delighted. He hadn't expected to encounter Ling Han here. However, he didn't run in Ling Han's direction. Instead, he turned back and sent a voice transmission with his divine sense. These people have been affected by the frenzy and have lost their minds. However, their strength is astonishing. They have already become pseudo-celestial venerables. Return to the academy immediately and spread the news. I will do my best to draw them away. Chapter 2709. This was also because these quasi-heavenly venerables didn't have intelligence, or else they wouldn't have fought with Ling Han head-on. They would have used a roaming tactic and looked out for each other. The power of 10 people might not be able to suppress Ling Han, but they would at least be invincible. But now, 10 great quasi-heavenly venerables were easily defeated, and the price was just Ling Han spitting out a mouthful of blood. "Brother Ling, you really are extraordinary." Du Shi had always called Ling Han by his name before because he was Ninth Heaven, and Ling Han was only 8th Heaven, but now that Ling Han was also Ninth Heaven, he completely regarded Ling Han as an existence of the same level. Moreover, his strength far surpassed his. Even with the help of the divine demon sword, he couldn't deny Ling Han's strength. Ling Han chuckled and put away the divine demon sword. "Brother Du, what's going on?" Ling Han asked. Du Shi's expression became solemn. "Mu and the others are still trapped in the mountain. We have to hurry and rescue them." He paused, then patted his head. "I'm really muddle-headed. Let me tell you from beginning to end." The matter was very simple. More than 200,000 years ago, the 3 of them came here to train, trying to find a breakthrough point. After tens of thousands of years of bloody battle, they did capture some inspiration, but there were still some deficiencies. During this period, they also met some people and fought together. Until 100,000 years ago, they accidentally discovered an ancient cavern and went in to take the risk to explore. In the end, they didn't find natural treasures, but poked a hornet's nest. There were countless quasi-heavenly venerables in seclusion, and under the command of a mysterious person, many quasi-heavenly venerables woke up and surrounded them. Fortunately, Du Shi and the others had made a lot of preparations before coming here to train, and even had Heaven Venerable level defensive treasures, but they still couldn't kill their way out. This trap lasted 100,000 years, and the Heaven Venerable level treasures were almost exhausted. There was no way, they could only forcibly break out. It was obviously unrealistic for everyone to leave together, and Du Shi's speed was the fastest, so the others covered him to break out, hoping that he could escape back to the martial arts academy and bring heavenly venerables to sweep this place and save them. Ling Han nodded and said, "Where is the specific location?" Du Shi pointed a finger at Ling Han and transmitted to him the route he had taken when he had escaped. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, "Brother Du, you'd better hurry back to the martial courtyard and report the situation. I'll think of a way to rescue Mu and the others. At the very least, we have to delay for a while and wait for the reinforcements to arrive." He didn't do everything because he knew very well that if Huang Yu brought all the 9th firmament immortal kings out, there would be tens of thousands of quasi-celestial venerables hidden in the volcano. With so many quasi-Empyreans attacking together, even a second-step Empyrean might not be able to handle it. Ling Han couldn't be sure, as he didn't know how powerful a second-step Heavenly Venerate's combat strength could be. "Brother Ling," Du Shi objected instinctively. How could he let Ling Han fall into danger? "It's better for you to go to the martial courtyard and report the news. I will go back and fight alongside Mu and the others." "Which one of us is better?" Ling Han said with a smile. Du Shi opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. After a while, he nodded and said, "Brother Ling, you must take care of yourself. Don't put yourself in danger. I will definitely rush back as soon as possible." "All right." Ling Han nodded. Du Shi glanced at Ling Han again, took a deep breath, and set off. This place wasn't suitable for him to stay for long. It was already extremely dangerous, and if he encountered another wave of pursuers, he would definitely be killed. Ling Han returned first and met up with the large black dog and Wall. "What? You're going to save those people?" The large black dog instantly jumped up upon hearing this. "Brat, don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you're strong and awesome. There are tens of thousands of quasi-celestial venerables there. If each of them unleashes a punch, even if you've cultivated the indestructible immortal gold body, you'll probably still be flattened." Tens of thousands of quasi-celestial venerables. This was something that couldn't possibly appear in the celestial realm. The large black dog couldn't imagine how powerful this force would be. Ling Han smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't act rashly. I'll act according to circumstances." The large black dog tried to persuade him again, but Ling Han wouldn't listen. "Damn dog, I heard from Du Shi that there might be crimson flame heaven fire rock in that cave." The large black dog instantly stopped trying to persuade him. Crimson flame heaven fire rock was crucial to whether they could cultivate the indestructible immortal gold body, so he really couldn't refuse. "You and Wall leave first," Ling Han said. Actually, even if he didn't say this, the large black dog didn't plan to stay here. Wall was even more so. He had always regarded himself as an analytical-type battle expert, and he was never willing to participate in matters like battles. Ling Han set out, heading towards the depths of the volcano. With Du Shi's directions, he naturally didn't have to take any wrong paths. After a day, he arrived at the place. He saw that there was a cave entrance in the mountain wall, and lava was rolling down, covering most of it. If one didn't look carefully, they definitely wouldn't discover it. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll and strode in. The lava hit his body, but was all blocked by the golden seals, unable to touch his body. This cave was also dripping with crimson lava, and the supreme regulations of fire filled the air. There wasn't even any breathable air here. Although Ling Han didn't need to breathe long ago, he still felt slightly uncomfortable because he was used to it. He didn't have to worry about the problem of light. Lava flowed here, and the surroundings were brightly lit. Ling Han strode forward. The cave was frighteningly quiet, and only the sound of flowing lava could be heard, which was very weak. There were many protruding rocks on the cave walls, and some were even very sharp, with lava attached to them. If one was grazed by them, it was very possible that it would pierce through one's body, and the regulations of fire would be injected into one's body, instantly killing a ninth heaven celestial king. Not only were there rocks on the cave walls, but there were also rocks on the ground, which was even more terrifying. If one stepped on them, his whole body could be instantly turned into ashes from top to bottom. Ling Han didn't dare to be careless, either. After all, he hadn't cultivated the indestructible immortal metal body, and even if his body was like immortal metal, it could still be burned and melted. This place could smelt immortal metal in the first place. He advanced carefully, and after walking for a long time, the front suddenly opened up. He once again arrived at a familiar scene. On a large flat ground, there were many giant eggs that were wrapped in black light. This place was clearly scorching hot, but these giant eggs made one's body and mind feel a chill. Sure enough, Huang Yu had brought those celestial kings here, and continued to communicate with somewhere unknown, transmitting mighty power. He didn't see Mu and the others here. Ling Han looked at these giant eggs, and a risky idea rose in his mind. Could the sharpness of the divine demon sword cut open these giant eggs, and send the pseudo-heavenly venerables inside to heaven? Right now, these pseudo-heavenly venerables were all in a state of seclusion and couldn't fight back. Not to mention tens of thousands, even hundreds of millions would be useless. As this idea rose, he couldn't help but think. He drew out the divine demon sword, arrived in front of a giant egg, and attacked without hesitation. This giant egg couldn't be cut open no matter what he did before, but now with the divine demon sword, it was cut open without any suspense. Chapter 27:10. The giant egg broke open, and a person was seen inside, hugging his knees and curling up into a ball. "I'm sorry," Ling Han said in his mind, and the divine demon sword stabbed out, directly sinking into that person's head. The celestial venerable tool showed its might. That person naturally died immediately. There was no grief from heaven and earth, because this person had already surpassed the category of celestial king and became a pseudo-celestial venerable. The heaven and earth would not have the slightest sympathy for such an existence passing away. Ling Han walked to the next giant egg and did the same. His efficiency was too high. The divine demon sword was invincible, and these pseudo-celestial venerables were still in the process of strengthening and had no power to resist at all. Even if there were tens of thousands of pseudo-celestial venerables here, with Ling Han's strength, how long would it take to walk through them? Pa. The giant eggs shattered one after another, and blood seeped out, turning this place into a hell. More importantly, Ling Han also used time acceleration on himself, so his speed was naturally even more astonishing. In less than 2 hours, the giant eggs here were almost all shattered. What are you doing?" Huang Yu's extremely furious voice sounded. Hong, a ray of light slashed over. Ling Han did not dodge, and continued to stab with the divine demon sword in his right hand. Another pseudo-celestial venerable was silently killed by him, and he returned a punch. Pung! The ray of light that attacked over was instantly shattered. "It's you!" Huang Yu saw Ling Han's true appearance, and his fury burned even more. Originally, he had already completed the mission, but because Ling Han had escaped from the Celestial King Cemetery, he had no choice but to transfer those Celestial Kings on a large scale, causing the process of raising these Celestial Kings to be interrupted. Fortunately, because of sufficient preparations, it was not impossible to continue. In these years, most Celestial Kings had already advanced into the pseudo-celestial venerable tier. In the blink of an eye, he was about to succeed, yet Ling Han came again. This time, the damage he caused was irreversible. Of those eggs, only a few were still intact now. At most 100. Damn it. For this day, how much effort did he put in, and how much energy did madness put in, but now it was destroyed by a mere Celestial King. In his anger, Huang Yu wanted to attack, but when he suddenly recalled how overbearing Ling Han's punch was, he couldn't help but suppress his impulse. After thousands of years, this young man, who was not even worth mentioning in his eyes at that time, had grown to a point where he could only look up to him. He easily shattered his attack with a single punch. He was too powerful. With a thought, he made a prompt decision and let out a long whistle. This whistling sound was incomparably sharp. Pa. the giant eggs actually shattered one after another. It wasn't because of his howl, but because the quasi-empyreans inside had woken up upon hearing those fluctuations. This interruption caused their evolution to completely stop, and it was impossible for them to have any room for improvement in the future. However, if these people were not awakened, they would only be killed by Ling Han one by one. Kill him. Desolate Moon pointed at Ling Han. Immediately, those quasi-empyreans all targeted Ling Han. Shio, they shot forward, attacking Ling Han. Ling Han merely swept a glance over them, and took in the number of these heavenly venerables. There were 102 of them. If there were only 10, then Ling Han would fight even at the risk of injury. A sweep of the divine demon sword could kill at least half, but more than 100, he shook his head in his mind. Forget it. He could kill a few quasi-empyreans with a single strike, but if 100 attacks landed on his body, it was guaranteed that even his physique would immediately explode. If 109th Heaven Celestial Kings could kill a quasi-empyrean, then what about 100 quasi-empyreans? They might even be able to kill a true empyrean. Ling Han retreated. Shio. These quasi-empyreans received the order, and dutifully carried it out, chasing after Ling Han. Kill him, we must kill him. Huang Yu said, flustered and exasperated. If he couldn't kill Ling Han, how could he explain it to madness? Now, the plan was definitely ruined. 100 quasi-empyreans could indeed cause some damage, but how could it compare to tens of thousands? Killing Ling Han could only be considered a small revenge. Ling Han ran in a hurry. This space was very large, and could allow 100 quasi-empyreans to attack with all their might. Fighting here was too much of a loss. He ran, and the quasi-empyreans chased. This mountain belly was extraordinarily large, like a plane. After running for a long time, he finally reached the end. There was actually a canyon here, but above his head was also a dark mass of mountains. There was lava densely spread like a spiderweb. In this valley, there were currently 7 people furiously bombarding it. Without thinking, Ling Han knew that these people were the quasi-empyreans here, because they were all naked. Mu and the others were in the valley. This scene was naturally in the memory image that Du Shi had given him. Ling Han roared and charged towards that valley. Behind him, 100 quasi-empyreans chased. Sensing Ling Han's approach, the quasi-empyreans surrounding the valley all turned around and struck at him. Ling Han's figure swayed, but he didn't block. He didn't want more quasi-empyreans to catch up. It just so happened that there were also wild attacks coming from the valley, allowing Ling Han to easily rush in. Perhaps these quasi-empyreans didn't care who went in. What was important was that they couldn't come out alive. Bang! Even more quasi-empyreans attacked crazily, wanting to tear this valley apart. Fortunately, although the mountain rocks couldn't withstand the power of quasi-empyreans, they seemed to have a life of their own. They would quickly grow back and recover at an extremely fast speed. It was because of this that Mu and the others had been able to defend this place for countless years. Ling Han. When the person who rushed in was actually Ling Han, Mu and Waning Moon couldn't help but cry out in alarm. This was too unexpected. Hello, Ling Han said with a chuckle. He even waved his hand in greeting. Now isn't the time for you to reminisce, someone said. He had a gourd in his hand that was spitting out green light. This light was very powerful and could even block the attacks of quasi-empyreans. Mu and Waning Moon came back to their senses and hurriedly joined the group of quasi-empyreans. Ling Han counted. Including him, there were a total of 8 people. There was only one woman, and from Du Shi's memories, he knew that her name was Lu Zian. These 7 were all peak 9th level celestial kings, and their evolution indexes were either 11 or 12. They had come here to obtain an opportunity to break through to the quasi-empyrean realm. Otherwise, even if they had empyrean-level treasures, they wouldn't be able to last for so long. Unfortunately, their treasures weren't empyrean-level treasures. They would eventually run out, and at that time, they would be drowned by the power of quasi-empyreans. What? Hurry up and help! Someone shouted. If it weren't for helping Ling Han come in, they wouldn't have had to use such a powerful move. This person was called Zhu Ba. Ling Han chuckled. You should be a bit more polite to your savior. Savior? Zhu Ba was about to go crazy. Ling Han had also brought over 100 quasi-Empyreans. This increased the pressure on them by several times. What kind of savior was this? Mu's heart stirred. You met Du Shi? Chapter 27:11. Ling Han nodded. Brother Du has already returned to the academy to report. Hearing this, everyone heaved sighs of relief. That was good. If they persisted for a few more years, they would definitely be able to survive. They had been guarding for 100,000 years, so a few more years shouldn't be a problem. With the help of the terrain, it didn't matter if they were besieging 7 or 70 pseudo-Empyrean exalts. This was because there was a limit to the number of attacks that could reach them. The canyon entrance could accommodate about 10 pseudo-Empyrean exalts at the same time. This created a powerful pressure that made Mu and the others feel suffocated. Luckily, they weren't relying on their own power to resist. They had Empyrean-level treasures. Thus, as long as these treasures could be used, they could hold on. These weren't real Empyrean exalts treasures, but they were refined by Empyrean exalts. Because the devouring metal was limited, how could they give it to juniors? Ling Han didn't make a move. Instead, he searched the canyon. In Du Shi's memories, he vaguely remembered the existence of the Scarlet Flame Skyfire Stone. After all, they had been here for 100,000 years. Even if they had been fighting, they still had a bit of time to observe the environment. He was searching. If there really was a Scarlet Flame Skyfire rock, then he would immediately cultivate the undying immortal gold body. At that time, he would be able to switch from defense to offense, slaughtering his way into those quasi-Empyreans and annihilating them. Why are you in a daze? Hurry up and help. Another immortal king shouted at Ling Han. His name was Liang Taiming. Wait. Ling Han looked around. If he couldn't find the Scarlet Flame Skyfire Stone, then once this line of defense was broken, he could only escape. Over 100 pseudo-Empyrean exalts working together wasn't something he could deal with, even if they were fake. Zhu Ba, Liang Taiming, and the others almost went crazy from anger. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't free themselves, they would have beaten up Ling Han. Even Waning Moon and Mu were a bit dissatisfied. They were all in the same boat, so this was too much. Ling Han didn't explain. He guessed that even if he did, these people wouldn't believe him. A 9th-level immortal king killing over 100 pseudo-Empyrean exalts was like a fantasy. He had to find the Scarlet Flame Skyfire or first. After looking around, his eyes stopped at a pit in the mountain wall. There should have been a stone here before, but it had been taken away by someone. The marks were still fresh. Who took the stones here? Ling Han asked. No one answered him. What are you doing here? Brother Mu. Ling Han looked towards Mu. Mu didn't want to answer at first, but since Ling Han pointed out his name, he had no choice but to say, it's with Brother Zhuge. Brother Zhuge is called Zhuge Xianming. Ling Han already knew who was who from Du Shi's memory. He said to Zhuge Xianming, Brother Zhuge, please give me that stone. I have a great use for it. Scram. Zhuge Xianming was furious. I asked you to defend against the attack, but you made all sorts of excuses. What are you trying to do now? Ling Han shook his head. Then I'm sorry, I don't have time to explain now. You'll know in the future. He directly made a move and grabbed towards Zhuge Xianming. You traitorous guy, could it be that you're a spy? Zhuge Xianming also retaliated, attacking Ling Han. However, which 9th Heaven Celestial King could fight against Ling Han now? Even a super freak at the peak of 9th Heaven with an evolution index of 12 couldn't do it, unless he was like Ling Han, who could also use the essence power of the origin world to temper his body. Peng, with one strike, Zhuge Xianming vomited blood, and his expression was extremely dispirited. Everyone was furious. Even Waning Moon and Mu were no exception. Ling Han had gone too far. However, they were immediately shocked. Zhuge Xianming was injured with one strike. Could he be a quasi-celestial venerable? Ling Han threw the divine demon sword at Waning Moon. I'll lend it to you first. Waning Moon was stunned. He knew that this was a real celestial venerable treasure. With the help of this thing, killing 9th Heaven Celestial Kings would be a piece of cake for him. He was even more confident in fighting against a quasi-celestial venerable. Previously, Ling Han looked as if he was here to cause trouble, but now he lent the celestial venerable treasure to him. This was obviously one of them. Shua, he raised his sword and slashed. A cold light soared into the sky with endless power. How powerful was a celestial venerable treasure? Even quasi-celestial venerables had to avoid its edge, not to mention these quasi-celestial venerables were the weakest. Surround them but don't attack. Waning Moon's voice sounded. He personally oversaw this place and commanded the battle. He wanted to drag out Ling Han and kill him. Without a commander, these quasi-celestial venerables were like a plate of loose sand. Even if they had the advantage in numbers, they were in their own formations and couldn't display their advantage in numbers. However, with a commander, it was different, and their power instantly soared. The pressure on Waning Moon and the others instantly increased by several times, so much so that they were almost in despair. However, all of them were supreme prodigies. In the face of such pressure, they only became more composed. This might give them an opportunity to break through. Suddenly, they sensed the unique power of the fiery frost dimension. Of course, it was useless even if they broke through to the quasi-celestial venerable realm now. This was because there wouldn't be a qualitative change in battle prowess when they first became a quasi-celestial venerable. No matter what, they had to raise their body techniques to a higher level that was on par with the laws. Then, their battle prowess would more than double when their body techniques and laws merged. For example, these quasi-celestial venerables in front of them were the weakest, but they were still stronger than any ninth heaven celestial king. The strength of a quasi-celestial venerable needed time to manifest. Ling Han didn't care so much. He searched Zhuge Xuanming's spatial divine tool and scanned it with his divine sense. Very quickly, he found a crimson stone. Crimson Flame Heavenly Fire Stona. Ling Han took out the stone and stuffed the spatial divine tool into Zhuge Xuanming's clothes. He walked to the side. He was going to cultivate the indestructible immortal gold body here. Come, he shouted softly. With a wave of his hands, a large pile of heavenly and earthly treasures appeared on the ground. He moved his hands, and the treasures flew towards him one by one. The items here were very complicated. There were epic elixirs, netherworld stagnant water, and the shell of a ninth heaven celestial turtle. Ling Han grabbed all of them, absorbed them with his body, and began to refine them. The commotion was a little big, causing Waning Moon and the others to look back. They all revealed strange expressions. Was he sharpening his spear at the last minute? Zhuge Xianming said in his heart. If Ling Han really did something, then he would bear with it on account of Ling Han saving everyone. Otherwise, he would definitely let Ling Han know that he definitely wouldn't humiliate anyone. Time passed slowly, and the pressure on Amu and the others also increased. Under Waning Moon's command, even if only 10 quasi-celestial venerables could attack at the same time, they could fully unleash their battle prowess. Moreover, waves of mental attacks kept coming, causing them to be on the verge of collapse. They were still able to persist because they were peerless geniuses. Their willpower was much stronger than that of ordinary people. But no matter what, there was a limit, and they were about to reach this limit. Chapter 27:13. In that instant, Ling Han's injuries were completely healed. The undying immortal gold body was not only as sturdy as immortal gold, but it also had the undying characteristic of immortal gold, and its recovery ability was extremely strong. Desolate Moon stared at Ling Han in shock. He was about to go crazy. How could he have such a recovery ability? This was too terrifying. He then gritted his teeth. So what if you can recover? There are so many quasi-empyreans here. How many times can you recover? Once is enough, Ling Han said calmly. He brandished his divine demon sword and began to counterattack. Peng, peng, peng. The battle prowess of a quasi-empyrean was still formidable, and he staggered from side to side. But this time, he didn't bleed. Instead, his body was covered in dents. If a quasi-empyrean attacked immortal metal, it would definitely create a pit. How deep it could go would depend on the strength of the attack. However, if he really wanted to destroy the immortal metal, he would have to use the intrinsic power of the origin world. That was to say, at least a first-step Empyrean had to make a move to destroy immortal metal. Ling Han shook his body, and the dents on his body immediately healed. He cracked a smile. So what if there were over 100 quasi-Empyreans? Unless the power of a half-Empyrean reached a limit, a single strike turning him into a meat patty, exceeding the tyrannical level of immortal gold, then he would definitely die. But 100 quasi-celestial venerables? Not enough. It was time for him to strike back. Ling Han roared, and the divine demon sword slashed out. It was indestructible, and at least not something that a pseudo-heavenly venerable could match. Pooh, a quasi-Empyrean immediately spat out blood. As for Ling Han, he had also paid the price. He had been struck by over 100 quasi-Empyreans, causing many more dents to appear on his body. However, with the recovery of his physique, he quickly recovered. Ling Han laughed heartily and attacked again. Pooh, pew pew. Sword after sword, he killed quasi-Empyreans like cutting grass. Strictly speaking, these quasi-Empyreans were just puppets. How strong could their combat strength be? Huang Yu commanded from the side, but he could only adjust the formation and set up tactics on a macroscopic level. How could he command every palm strike and every strike on a microscopic level? Moreover, the battle was ever-changing. This was a quasi-heavenly exalt attacking, while he was only a ninth firmament immortal king. How could he possibly keep up? Quasi-Empyreans fell one after another. Very soon, the number passed 50. Baron Moon panicked. Come to think of it, it wouldn't be long before Ling Han annihilated these quasi-Empyreans. What kind of monster is this? Ah Mu and the others were also stunned. Their eyes stared blankly, unable to accept this no matter what. It was already inconceivable that a ninth firmament immortal king could possess the combat strength of a quasi-heavenly venerate. It broke the iron law of martial art. However, Ling Han was even more domineering now. Quasi-heavenly venerates were like weeds to him. He could harvest them at will. Was he really in the same realm as them? How could Ling Han be so strong? They were all super monsters with evolution indexes of 12, so why was the difference between them so huge? It wasn't that they weren't monstrous enough, but that they weren't as lucky as Ling Han. If they could also be tempered by Suzi's energy and had an Empyrean treasure artifact, their combat strength wouldn't lose to Ling Han by much. This also meant that once Ling Han truly became a quasi-heavenly venerate or a second-step heavenly venerate, his advantage would completely disappear. Everyone had been tempered by the intrinsic power of the origin world, or they had grasped one of the 6 intrinsic powers of the origin world apart from the unique power of the fire-frost plane. In that case, there would be no difference in strength. In the end, it all depended on one's own strength. This thought floated through Ling Han's mind, but he didn't show any mercy. Soon, another dozen or so quasi-heavenly venerates fell. And the more quasi-heavenly venerates that fell, the fewer attacks he received. Of course, the injuries he suffered also became lighter and lighter. Baron Moon gritted his teeth, turned around, and ran. If he didn't run, once Ling Han annihilated all the quasi-heavenly venerates, it would be his turn to suffer. He was only a ninth heaven celestial king. How could he fight a quasi-heavenly venerate? But he had forgotten that Ling Han was actually only a ninth heaven celestial king. The problem was, who would treat Ling Han as a ninth heaven celestial king now? Ling Han laughed loudly, and his feet exploded. Ping, he dashed out. Although many quasi-heavenly venerates tried to stop him, Ling Han ignored them. Under the barrage of dozens of attacks, he had already charged out and was chasing after Baron Moon. Baron Moon turned his head, and his face couldn't help but turn green. There were still more than 40 quasi-heavenly venerates left, but they couldn't even stop Ling Han. This was natural. With an Empyrean treasure opening the way, how could they stop him? Ling Han reached out to grab Baron Moon. You can't die so easily. I'm going to take you back to the academy and offer you as a sacrifice to Hero Xiao. Don't be so petty. Baron Moon snorted. A mental attack shot toward Ling Han. But Ling Han was not affected in the slightest. His hand that stretched out was steady without the slightest tremble. Previously, as long as he hid in the celestial visitor residence, he would not be affected by the black chi. In other words, divine metal could effectively block this kind of mental attack. Then, now that he had cultivated the indestructible divine metal body, could it be that he did not have this kind of immunity? His palm descended, and Barren Moon could not possibly dodge it. How could a ninth heaven celestial king be a match for a quasi-heavenly venerate? Ling Han captured Barren Moon, sealed his cultivation level, and tossed him into a spatial god tool. He was afraid that Barren Moon would still emit demonic chi and contaminate the women, so he naturally could not be sent into the celestial visitor residence. Once Barren Moon disappeared, the remaining quasi-heavenly venerates immediately became dazed. Their master was gone, and they were like kites with their strings cut. All that was left was the most primitive instinct to kill. Ling Han brandished the divine demon sword again. Shwa shwa shwa. Sword light blazed, and very soon, the remaining quasi-heavenly venerates all collapsed. Only then did he withdraw his sword and stride towards the canyon. Mu and the others were all dumbfounded. They only knew to stare at Ling Han in shock, but completely did not know what to say. Was this really a ninth heaven celestial king like them? What's wrong? Ling Han asked with a smile. I'm a little shocked and still trying my best to digest it, Mu said. This was the truth, but it also showed how big his heart was. Otherwise, there was no way he would say such words now. Everyone nodded. This kind of ninth heaven celestial king should be unique. Brother Ling, did you want the Crimson Heaven Fire Rock just now to cultivate the final secret technique? Lu Zian asked, her beautiful eyes sparkling. She herself was a freak whose evolution index had reached 12, and was destined to become a heavenly venerate. There was no longer anyone that could make her admire them, but now, she felt how insignificant she was. This was a true freak. One person was 100 times more awesome than all of them combined. She felt her heart beat wildly, and her cheeks were dyed red. It was as if a certain nerve had been stirred. Ling Han nodded. This had already been seen by others, so there was no point in denying it. Moreover, at his current level, even if he cultivated a heavenly venerate secret technique, there was no need to hide such a thing. As long as the heavenly venerates did not appear, he had no fear. Should we wait here now or immediately return? Mu asked. They definitely could not catch up to Du Shi, so it was better to wait here for the heavenly venerates of the Martial Arts Academy to rush over. At that time, it would be the same to hitch a ride back. In the meantime, they could also continue to cultivate here. Chapter 27:14. Most people were still willing to continue cultivating here. After all, their goal was to break through to pseudo-heavenly venerable, and they hadn't succeeded yet, right? Moreover, after being stimulated by Ling Han, they wanted to advance into pseudo-heavenly venerable even more. Ling Han, however, didn't plan to stay here for long. He had already advanced into the ninth heaven and cultivated the indestructible immortal gold body, so becoming a pseudo-heavenly venerable didn't require any comprehension. He only needed to raise his cultivation to the peak of the ninth heaven, and then he could directly break through to the first step of heavenly venerable. This only needed time, and it wasn't any dangerous environment. Furthermore, for Ling Han, this place couldn't be considered a dangerous place. He left, first meeting up with Wall and the large black dog, and then returning to the academy. However, he had miscalculated this time. Because the academy had sent out a second step heavenly venerable, and he only used a few days to rush to Mount Broken Cloud. Knowing that the danger had been resolved, he returned to the academy, much faster than Ling Han. If he had known, he would have hitched a ride. Ling Han didn't mind. For him, a few years was actually no different than a few days. He handed Huang Yu to the academy, and someone would naturally dig out all the information he knew about madness, and once it was dug out, this kind of traitor would naturally be executed. However, that second step heavenly venerable didn't publicize Ling Han's battle achievements. An important figure like him naturally disdained to do so. When Mu and the others returned, they would naturally spread it. He only recorded a large amount of merit for Ling Han, and even gave Ling Han a death exemption medallion, allowing him to break the academy's rules once. Actually, Ling Han didn't really care. He already had the strength of a pseudo-heavenly venerable, and with the word heavenly venerable, he would no longer be bound by the rules, transcending beyond the mortal world. He stayed in the academy for a few days, and naturally had some things to say to Yi, Yen Xianlu, and the others. He also went to Ji Wuming and Fire Hibiscus. After so many years, these two naturally had great improvements, but he had already left the distance between them. However, in this great world, pseudo-heavenly venerable was only a starting point, and the seventh step heavenly venerable was the true end. After staying for another 2 days, Ling Han decided to leave. He had to make a trip to the Lin clan first to pick up the Empress and head to the Outer Realm battlefield. As for whether the Rain Emperor would go or not, that would depend on his own will. Bam! Before he could leave, the door was smashed open. Ling Han, get the hell out here, shouted a loud voice. Ling Han was astonished. Ever since he had gone on a killing spree and killed a great many Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings, everyone in the academy had to address him as Senior Brother Ling upon seeing him. How come someone dared to come to his doorstep and cause trouble now? He walked out and saw a young man standing at the door with an aggressive look on his face. It was Mayuhai. Ling Han was astounded. Did this guy take the wrong medicine? He actually dared to provoke him? He couldn't help but find it funny. He strolled out and said, Mayuhai, haven't you learned your lesson? Mayuhai humphed. Ling Han, don't think you're awesome. Today, this young master will teach you how to behave. Ling Han's eyes sharpened. With Mayuhai's attitude towards him, even if he was beaten half to death, he guaranteed that the academy wouldn't pursue the matter. A heavenly venerable couldn't be insulted. Mayuhai was instantly given a fright. He hurriedly took 3 steps back and said, I'm warning you, don't act recklessly, because my father has returned from the Outer Realm battlefield. Ling Han gave an oh. No wonder. Mayuhai's father, Ma Feng, was a pseudo-heavenly venerable. With such an elite backing him, he naturally had no scruples. Ling Han shook his head. So, you think you can provoke me? Mayuhai pointed at Ling Han. I'm giving you a chance. Apologize to me now, and let this young master beat you up. Then this young master will let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, I can only ask my father to step in. When he said the last sentence, he was filled with threat. Ling Han was very awesome. He killed a 9th Heaven Celestial King with his sword and even made a pseudo-heavenly venerable bleed. But He Yufeng was just a newly promoted pseudo-heavenly venerable. In terms of strength, could he compare with Ma Feng, a veteran elite who had fought in the Outer Realm battlefield for God knows how many years? Moreover, it wasn't that He Yufeng couldn't beat Ling Han. It was just that Ling Han used a big move, and he was only slightly injured. His own strength surpassed Ling Han by who knew how many times. So, he naturally had Ling Han in his grasp. If it wasn't for the fact that Ling Han had the Lin family behind him and that his father was only a half-step heavenly venerable, he really wanted to kill Ling Han. Ling Han chuckled, but he immediately slapped him. Mayuhai was instantly sent flying. On account of Ma Feng fighting in the Outer Realm battlefield for so many years, he didn't kill him, leaving a Dao root for the Ma family. Of course, if Mayuhai still didn't know what was good for him, then he wouldn't be merciful anymore. Back then, Mayuhai had asked Qin Shuang to kill him, and that was enough to sentence him to death. In less than half a day, a piece of news spread. Ma Feng said that he wanted Ling Han to kneel all the way to Mayuhai's place before today. Otherwise, he would make a move. Instantly, the entire martial arts institution was in an uproar. A pseudo-heavenly venerable was going to make a move to deal with Ling Han. Ling Han should just give in. That's right. If a pseudo-heavenly venerable makes a move, there's no way he can block it. After all, this isn't the 10 moves agreement with He Yufeng. Who's going to support Ling Han this time? As long as no one dies, the martial arts institution won't stop a pseudo-heavenly venerable. We have to give him this bit of face. Not necessarily. Didn't you hear that Ling Han defeated a pseudo-heavenly venerable from the Yun family? Even if he goes up against Lord Ma Feng, he might not necessarily be at a disadvantage. You actually believe such rumors? That's right. Ling Han is only at the 8th layer. How can he fight against a pseudo-heavenly venerable? Everyone was overwhelmingly against Ling Han. Even if there were one or two voices of opposition, they would be immediately drowned out. Ling Han naturally heard about it as well. He shook his head. Ma Feng really doted on his son. Of course, he wouldn't apologize to Ma Yuhai. He could only pretend that he didn't know. A day passed, and the sun still rose. Ling Han, come out. A low voice rang out from outside, but it was filled with deterrence. Ling Han was originally just meditating and cultivating. He was still far from the peak of the 9th layer, and there was still a lot of room for his strength to improve. Every moment was extremely important to him. He stood up and went outside. He saw a middle-aged man standing 30 feet away from the door. He was dressed in black battle armor, and there were many places where it was broken. However, this battle armor definitely couldn't be underestimated because it was forged from immortal metal. Even a battle armor forged from immortal metal was so broken. What kind of battle had this person experienced? He was Ma Feng, and he had just returned from the extraterritorial battlefield. The battles there were naturally bloody. Ling Han cupped his fists and said, "So it's Brother Ma." Ma Feng's brows instantly twitched. A mere 9th layer celestial king actually dared to address him as brother. His son hadn't lied to him. This brat was truly boundlessly arrogant. Young man, don't think that you can look down on everyone just because you have some talent. Ma Feng said indifferently. I'm not going overboard either. I'll only break your arms and legs so that you won't be able to recover for 100 million years. You should properly reflect on your actions. Chapter 27:15. Originally, broken arms and legs could quickly recover, but since Ma Feng said such words, he was obviously confident. As long as a strand of martial arts will remain, then even the smallest injury could not be healed. In the martial arts academy, Ma Feng did not dare to act recklessly and kill as he pleased. After all, he was only a pseudo-celestial venerable. Ling Han frowned. Brother Ma, I have principles when doing things. If no one provokes me, I will not provoke anyone. So, don't just listen to your son's side of the story. Ma Feng sneered. Just because of your disrespect to me, I will teach you a good lesson. Too arrogant, a mere celestial king dared to call a pseudo-celestial venerable brother. At this time, many people were rushing over from various mountains. They had long been waiting for this moment. Ling Han did not go to Ma Yuhai's place, so Ma Feng would definitely make a move. Thus, when Ma Feng appeared, everyone rushed over. Ma Yuhai had also arrived. There was a cold smile at the corners of his lips. Ling Han actually dared to humiliate him time and time again. Today, he would let Ling Han have a taste of being humiliated. However, now that things had come to this, he naturally did not hope to change the Wang clan's young lady's mind. Ling Han looked at Ma Feng. He could be said to have seen many pseudo-celestial venerables and killed many, but compared to Ma Feng, other than Lin Piaoxue, no one could even look at his back. After all, He Yufeng and Yun Yanghao had just broken through, and Green Ghost Celestial King and the others were puppets formed by power imbuement. Which one could compare to Ma Feng? This was a true pseudo-celestial venerable. Brother Ma, I respect you for fighting for many years on the foreign battlefield. This is my last advice. Stop here, Ling Han said calmly. Even if Ma Feng's strength far surpassed He Yufeng and Yun Yanghao's, so what? With his current battle prowess and the divine demon sword, he could already fear no pseudo-celestial venerable, so how could he suffer such great humiliation? A look of disdain appeared on Ma Feng's face. An immortal king actually dared to act cocky in front of him, saying such ruthless words. How much more arrogant was this? He calmly replied, the contributions and sacrifices of this sovereign aren't something you can understand. Kneel. He suddenly said loudly, his voice berserk, piercing straight into the soul. Pa Ling Han didn't kneel, but at least a dozen people nearby knelt down. All of them were terrified. After all, they were emperors, yet they couldn't even resist a single shout from a quasi-heavenly exalt. As for the others who didn't kneel, their faces were also pale. The might of an Empyrean surpassed the rules and was incomparably terrifying. Only Ling Han acted as if nothing had happened. He put his hands behind his back and smiled. Brother Ma, Do you basically rely on shouting when you fight? It was ironic. Ma Feng immediately revealed an angry expression, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. However, before he could say anything, Ma Yuhai jumped out first. Ling Han, you dare to be rude to my father. Do you know that my father was fighting madly in the Outer Realm battlefield? Without my father's sacrifice and bloodshed, how would you have the right to stand here and speak? Hearing this, many people nodded in their hearts. It wasn't that there weren't any Empyreans now, but rather that everyone was fighting against the frenzy in the foreign battlefields. This was a great sacrifice, and it was worthy of respect. You dare to be disrespectful to the heroes of the foreign battlefields? You deserve to die 1,000 times, Ma Yuhai said. Ling Han sneered. That's right. You deserve to die 1,000 times for being disrespectful to those who have made great contributions. Xiao, he made a move, grabbing out at Ma Yuhai. How dare you? You still dare to be insolent in front of this Empyrean. Ma Feng also made a move, slapping out a palm at Ling Han. This brat had really eaten some tyrant's guts. He actually dared to make a move against his son in front of him. Was he an idiot? Ling Han clenched his fist again and punched out at Ma Feng. The two of them collided, and Ling Han was instantly sent flying. However, Ma Feng's feet also moved, and he retreated 7 steps in succession. However, Ling Han used this time's impact to speed up and shoot out at Ma Yuhai. He stretched out his hand again and pressed down. How could Ma Yuhai have any room to resist? He immediately fell into Ma Yuhai's palm. With this move, Ling Han no longer held back his strength. 9 rays of light flashed on his body. A 9th heaven celestial king. Heavens, when he fought with Yu Feng, he was only at the 8th level of heaven. How many years has it been, and he has already advanced into the 9th level of heaven? All of the students were dumbfounded. Every single one of them was a genius in martial art, but when faced with Ling Han's cultivation speed, they could only be shocked. Ma Feng's expression was even more unsightly. Even a quasi-heavenly venerable had made a move, but he still could not stop Ling Han from committing murder, allowing his son to fall into the other's hands. He was both angry and anxious, and he wanted nothing more than to blast Ling Han into pieces. However, he was also worried that his son was in Ling Han's hands, so he did not dare to act rashly. Release him, he said coldly. Ling Han shook his head. Ma Feng, although I really want to respect you, I only feel selfishness and arrogance from you. How many contributions do you think you have made? You are just a mere quasi-heavenly venerable. In the extraterrestrial battlefield, you are just a bystander. Say, without you, do you think that frenzy would have been able to cause more destruction? Don't think too highly of yourself. You don't know what your son has done either. Ling Han paused and said, previously, your son used a heavenly venerable pill as the price to invite a 9th level celestial king to kill me. I want to calculate with you, what crime is it to attempt to murder a disciple of the martial arts institution? Nonsense. Ma Feng waved his sleeves. Of course, he had pushed the blame clean. Otherwise, if the martial arts institution pursued the matter, the crime would be huge. Ling Han picked Ma Yuhai up. Do you admit it? Nonsense. Ma Yuhai shook his head quickly. How could he admit it? Moreover, in the martial arts institution, in front of his father, would Ling Han dare to extort a confession? Not talking? Ling Han revealed a smile, but it was filled with killing intent. Ma Yuhai felt a chill in his heart, but he immediately raised his head. If you want to incriminate me, how can I admit that you treated a disciple of the martial arts institution like this? Where are the rules of the martial arts institution? Do you really think that you can be lawless? He revealed a cold smile. With such a big accusation, coupled with his father adding fuel to the fire, it was guaranteed that Ling Han would not be able to escape this calamity. He would have to pay a huge price. Come and force me. With so many people around, the heavier your methods, the more miserable the punishment you will receive from the martial arts institution. Ma Feng, on the other hand, revealed a smile. He was very pleased that his son was so brave. Even after falling into the enemy's hands, he was still unyielding. As expected of his good son. The others also looked at Ling Han. How was this going to end? Ling Han, if you have any moves, just come at me. If this young master even frowns, I'll be your grandson. Ma Yuhai was getting more and more arrogant. I'll grant you your wish. Ling Han smiled faintly and slapped with his right hand. But Ma Yuhai's forehead immediately caved in. Ma Yuhai stared at Ling Han blankly. He never thought that Ling Han would actually try to kill him. How dare he? This was the martial arts institution, and his father was even overseeing it. Before he could finish his thought, he collapsed to the ground. His sea of consciousness had been destroyed. Naturally, death was the only path left for him. Everyone was stunned. Like Ma Yuhai, they were all shocked that Ling Han dared to make such a move. The only difference was that they could still continue to be shocked, but Ma Yuhai was already dead. Chapter 27:17. Hearing Heavenly Venerable Yulong's words, everyone was stunned. What kind of favoritism was this? Everyone was incredibly curious. What shocking things had Ling Han done to receive such treatment? They really could not imagine, because no matter what, Ling Han only had the battle prowess of a pseudo-heavenly venerable. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Ma Feng shouted loudly, the veins on his face bulging. There must be some inside story. This was deliberate favoritism. Noisy! Heavenly Venerable Yulong humphed. Hong, a large hand suddenly descended from the sky, grabbing towards Ma Feng. He was a second-step Heavenly Venerable, and explaining for a pseudo-Heavenly Venerable for half a day was already giving him enough face. This was mainly because of Ma Feng's pain of losing his son and his bloody battle with the frenzied army. And in terms of contribution, would he, a second-step Heavenly Venerable, be less than Ma Feng? If he did not become a true Heavenly Venerable, he would only be a bystander. Ma Feng was powerless to resist, and was easily grabbed by this large hand. Then, with a fling, he was out of the martial arts academy, instantly disappearing without a trace. Bury him properly. Everyone, disperse, Heavenly Venerable Yulong said again, and then there was no more sound. This everyone's mouths were half open. In their eyes, Ling Han definitely could not escape this calamity, but he actually passed so easily. Ling Han only smiled faintly, turned around, and returned to his house. This matter naturally formed a huge tsunami in the martial arts academy, and also scared another spoiled brat half to death. That was Zhuo Kai. His father was also about to return from his vacation in the Outer Realm battlefield, and he had also planned to use his father to bully Ling Han. Thankfully he did not. He continuously patted his chest. Otherwise, the person lying on the ground would be him. Furthermore, Ling Han could still get away with it. He really could not die in peace. Taking a step back, he was not an official disciple of the Martial Arts Academy, so his death was even more meaningless. After Ling Han dealt with all the trivial matters, he set off for the Lin family with the large black dog. Meanwhile, Vale had no intention of going to the Outer Realm battlefield. He had always flaunted himself as an analytical type, and fighting and killing was not something he should do. After traveling for more than 10 days, they returned to the Lin family. You broke through to the 9th layer of heaven so quickly. Lin Piaoxue was still in the Lin family. She knew that Ling Han had returned, so she specially came to see him. She couldn't help but sigh with emotion. I also heard some of your deeds. Now you have the strength to rival a quasi-Empyrean. Ling Han smiled. I still have to thank your father for his kindness and Miss Lin's guidance. Previously, Lin Piaoxue had been acting as their sparring partner. For a quasi-Empyrean to lower herself to do such a thing, this was a great favor. Lin Piaoxue also smiled. Come, let's practice. What level have you reached? The two of them soared into the sky and began to bombard each other. If you have any ultimate moves, just use them. Lin Piaoxue said. At this moment, she was no longer a gentle and charming lady from a respectable family, but a female warrior on the battlefield. Ling Han did not hold back and went all out. The two of them fought for about an hour before they both stopped. Lin Piaoxue was very approving of him. According to your cultivation level, your body techniques can only be considered as early-stage quasi-Empyrean, but your strength has reached the late stage. This is very incredible. Moreover, your physique is extremely strong. Together with such battle prowess, you can even be unafraid of a peak-stage quasi-Empyrean expert. Ling Han naturally knew this, but he still smiled modestly. Miss Lin, you praise me. It's all because Grandpa Dog taught you well, the large black dog said shamelessly at the side. Ling Han and Lin Piaoxue ignored him and continued to talk. This made the large black dog go crazy. They actually ignored him. You're going to the Outer Realm battlefield next? Lin Piaoxue asked. Ling Han nodded. He wanted to quickly increase his cultivation level in the blood battle and reach the peak stage of the 9th layer. Then, he would be able to draw on Su's energy and directly become a first-step Heavenly Venerable. And this kind of first-step Heavenly Venerable would definitely be the strongest in the same cultivation level. Others all used the unique power of the plane and could not compare to Su's energy. Only when he became a second-step Heavenly Venerable would his advantage disappear. Lin Piaoxue nodded. That's good too. You already have no opponents here. If you are allowed to cultivate alone here, the time for you to reach the peak stage will be very far away. She wanted to say something, but stopped herself. Miss Lin, is there anything else? Ling Han asked. Lin Piaoxue hesitated for a moment, and then said, although your talent is extraordinary, I have to remind you that the true geniuses are actually all in the Outer Realm battlefield. Ling Han nodded. He had heard Lin Piaoxue say before that the clansmen of the Lin clan were not sent to the martial arts academy. Instead, they would cultivate within the clan, and when they reached a certain cultivation level, they would be directly sent to the Outer Realm battlefield to fight. In the number 1 martial arts academy in the world, Ling Han had seen descendants of 3rd step and even 4th step Heavenly Venerable, but he had never seen descendants of 5th step or 6th step, let alone 7th step. The Outer Realm battlefield was a slaughterhouse, but at the same time, it was also the most suitable place for growth. Survival of the fittest, and those who survived were all elites. There were no mediocre people. I understand, he said. Lin Piaoxue shook her head. You don't understand. She paused for a moment and then said, do you think that you're the only one in a situation like this? Ling Han was instantly moved and he said, there are people like me? Lin Piaoxue nodded slowly. Under the chaotic world-destroying pressure, the entire origin world also ushered in a great explosion of talents. As far as I know, there are 2 people who have the strength to rival quasi-heavenly venerables when they were in the 9th heaven, and even have the strength to kill quasi-heavenly venerables. Ling Han asked. There was only curiosity and fighting spirit in him, and there was no jealousy at all. Lin Piaoxue glanced at him with appreciation, and then said, one person is called Xen Chihu, and he is a true supreme genius. The time he took to rush to the 9th heaven is even shorter than yours. However, his father is Lord Xen Fu, a 7th step Heavenly Venerable. Since young, the cultivation resources and environment he had are many times better than yours. You don't have to worry about it. Ling Han nodded slowly, and then asked, what's Xen Chihu's cultivation now? Lin Piaoxue used the words when they were in the 9th heaven, and not what their current combat strength was. 3rd step Heavenly Venerable. Lin Piaoxue said solemnly, and there was a hint of admiration in her eyes. Until now, he has only cultivated for 700 million years. 700 million years? Many celestial kings might not be able to step into the 1st heaven in an epoch, but Xen Chihu became a 3rd step Heavenly Venerable in 700 million years. Such talent in martial art was too amazing. Ling Han nodded. I hope I can spar with him. His eyes lit up. Such a genius was definitely worth fighting. Lin Piaoxue was surprised. He was already a 3rd step Heavenly Venerable. What made you think you could catch up to him? However, Ling Han was not the kind of person who was blindly confident. The radiance on his face made people involuntarily believe him. What about the other one? Ling Han asked again. The other one? Lin Piaoxue revealed a smile. That's my aunt and also my grandfather's youngest daughter. Her name is Yu Lian, and her talent is not inferior to Xen Chihu's. She is also a 3rd step Heavenly Venerable now. You have to know that my aunt is much younger than me. She was indeed a monster. Was this the descendant of a seventh-step heavenly venerable? Born strong and with a boundless future. Ling Han's heart moved, and he suddenly asked an unrelated question. Why are you called Piaoxue? Chapter 27:18. Lin Piaoxue was stunned for a moment before saying, "When I was born, it happened to be snowing, so my grandfather gave me this name." A chill rose in Ling Han's heart. Although Lin Luo was a seventh-step celestial venerable, her ability to take names was on par with his. They were both just messing around. "I'm going back to the foreign battlefield too. Tell me when you're ready, and I'll take you there," Lin Piaoxue said. Ling Han nodded and went to the Empress and the Rain Sovereign. After so many years, the two of them had both reached the peak of the eighth heaven, and it was already impossible to cross over just by relying on bitter cultivation. Therefore, even if Ling Han didn't come, they planned to return to the academy to look for Ling Han. To the foreign battlefield. Both of them quickly made the same decision. Okay. Ling Han went to find Lin Piaoxue, and they could set off at any time. 3 days later, Lin Piaoxue set off with them on the immortal Golden Bull. They traveled through space, but it still took them 70 years to reach the place. Along the way, Lin Piaoxue introduced the situation of the foreign battlefield in detail. In terms of the battle situation, Frenzy still had the absolute advantage and was pushing forward step by step. However, the Fire Frost Plain was extremely vast, and there was still a long time before it completely fell. As they got closer and closer to the two-realm battlefield, they found that the surrounding laws were getting more and more chaotic, and it was even difficult to sense them. This was also why only level 9 celestial kings could come here. Only level 9 celestial kings could barely draw the laws to fight. Other celestial kings couldn't even think about it. However, the more it was in such a situation, the more likely it was to feel the unique power of the plane and take a crucial step forward. It was the same for celestial venerables. This was the place where two planes collided. The intrinsic power was more active, and it was easier to touch and sense. This was a dangerous place, but it was also a holy land for breakthroughs. The premise was that they could survive. The battle is very intense. Every year, a large number of level 9 celestial kings die. Celestial venerables aren't high and mighty, and it's very likely that they'll become Daos after encountering a siege, Lin Piaoxue said solemnly. The world here was very special. There were many levels, and the stronger one was, the higher the level they needed to be able to withstand its power. Therefore, if they were to invade in a frenzy, the strong and the weak would all come in different levels and batches. Of course, the weakest person sent by chaos was equivalent to a 9th firmament immortal king. It was impossible for them to be weaker. Simply put, there are a total of 8 floors here. For example, quasi-heavenly venerables and 9th firmament immortal monarchs like us are active in the first level. This is because first-step heavenly venerables and above are unable to unleash their full strength here. They will be targeted by the plane. First-step heavenly venerates are in the 2nd level, and so on and so forth. In the 8th level, the 7th-step heavenly venerates sit there and resist the frenzied main body. However, the space here isn't absolute. There are many singularities. You're clearly on the 1st level, but after passing through a cave, a lake, or a layer of clouds, you might enter another space. Even the 3rd or 5th level is possible. Once you discover such a situation, don't try to be brave. Run back immediately, or you'll die. Lin Piaoxue said solemnly. This was the way to survive in the foreign battlefield. It was precious information that had been exchanged for countless bloodshed and sacrifices. Ling Han and the others nodded. Meanwhile, the large black dog's eyes darted around rapidly. If he hadn't been born here, he would have really wanted to turn and run. Alright, keep your nerves tense forever. Welcome to the foreign battlefield. Lin Piaoxue opened the carriage door and was the first to jump out. Fairy Lin, Ling Han and the others were still in the carriage when they heard someone greeting Lin Piaoxue from outside. They also got out of the carriage and saw that they were in a huge camp. There were tall walls that stood tall, and they couldn't reach the top at all. This was a barrier against Frenzy's army. Every once in a while, Frenzy would organize an army to launch a fierce attack. Everyone would stay here to defend. After defeating Frenzy's army, they would go out of the city and hunt down the wandering soldiers. Of course, this was only the first level. The other 7 levels were the same. It was said that new strongholds were being built at the back. Since the start of the war, they had already abandoned at least 20,000 strongholds, and they had been constantly retreating. One day, this place would fall again, and then they would retreat to the strongholds at the back. That would be a new cycle. However, if that was the case, there would be a day when they would have nowhere to retreat to. Or rather, when the fiery frost plane lost enough territory, it would no longer be a super high-level plane. Then, would it still be able to resist chaos? Just thinking about it made people feel a chill in their hearts. Therefore, they had to fight for every inch of land and never retreat easily. For this reason, countless people had shed their blood here. There were celestial kings, celestial venerables, and even high-level celestial venerables. Ling Han and the others were shocked by this wall. Then, they went to meet the person who greeted Lin Piaoxue. This was a man. He was tall and slender, and his facial features were handsome. He gave off a gentle and refined feeling. There was no aura on his body, but when he occasionally turned his eyes, there was a frightening pressure rising. Quasi-celestial venerable, Brother Lu, Lin Piaoxue said indifferently. This person was called Lu Tianxian. He was the son of a third-step celestial venerable. He was very interested in Lin Piaoxue and had always been pursuing her. However, only Lu Tianxian himself knew whether he was pursuing Lin Piaoxue herself or the Lin family behind her. Or perhaps it was both. Fairy Lin, you're finally back. Everyone missed you very much, Lu Tianxian said, his eyes filled with undisguised adoration. Lin Piaoxue smiled. Brother Lu, I still have something to do. I have to arrange for them to report and stay. Let me, Lu Tianxian hurriedly said, extremely enthusiastic. Lin Piaoxue obviously didn't want to spend too much time with him. Naturally, she couldn't do anything to him, so she could only entrust this errand to him. The 3 of you, please follow me, Lu Tianxian said very politely. He led Ling Han and the others away. This city only had one side of the wall. The reason for this was obvious, so they didn't take the step of entering the city. But after walking for a while, Lu Tianxian's expression turned cold. Go to Heaven's Pivot and report yourselves. Just keep walking forward. After saying this, he turned and ran. Ling Han and the others looked at each other. This guy was too two-faced. He was extremely enthusiastic in front of Lin Piaoxue, but he changed his attitude in the blink of an eye. He really makes me speechless, Ling Han said with a shake of his head. No wonder Miss Lin doesn't like him. His breadth of mind is really shameless. Meanwhile, the Rain Emperor rubbed his fists. He really wanted to give Lu Tianxian a good beating, but he was not powerful enough right now, so he could only treat this as a beautiful thought. Tianxing? Where is Tianxing? The large black dog howled. Originally, this was what he was most concerned about, but now, there was only Tianxing in his eyes. Ling Han nodded. Go to Heaven's Pivot and report first, then find Tianxing. Heaven's Pivot was the command center of every level. For example, there were 2 first-step heavenly venerables guarding this level. Even if this level couldn't allow a first-step heavenly venerate to display their full battle prowess, such figures were still a kind of deterrence. Moreover, if it were someone else, they might not be convinced. There were too many prodigies here, so who would be convinced? Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 27:19. This place was astonishingly large. Ling Han and the others walked along the city walls for a long time before finally arriving at Drive Sky. This was a very large building, but it only had 1 floor. Although it was large, the decorations were extremely simple. This was a battlefield, not a place for entertainment. What was the point of decorating it magnificently? When the 4 of them entered, someone immediately received them, registered their identity, and then arranged their accommodation. Ling Han immediately asked about Tianxing's whereabouts. The person murmured for a moment, and then suddenly realized. Is it that guy with the immortal gold physique? TSK, that guy is incredible. He's only been here for 10 million years, but he's already become a ninth heaven celestial king. He can even compete with a quasi-celestial venerable. Truly amazing. Ling Han knew that a person with extraordinary talent like Tianxing would cause a commotion wherever he went. Thus, it should be very easy to find out where Tianxing was. As expected, the person said, Tianxing should have left the city to hunt down the survivors of the frenzy army that didn't die after they attacked the city. Thanks. Ling Han nodded at the person. The four of them first returned to their accommodation. This place had been prepared for everyone, and there were strict rules that forbade internal fights. If there was a personal grudge, they could fight after they left this place. Here, everyone was one, and they only had one goal: to fight against the frenzy army. Of course, private fights were not allowed, but it did not forbid martial artists to spar with each other. This could help improve one's cultivation, so it was naturally not forbidden. Ling Han and the others hadn't stayed for long when the large black dog couldn't help but urge, "Quick, go find Tianxing." Ling Han shook his head. Once they left the city, who knew where Tianxing would go? Even if they caught Wali, there would definitely be no way to find him. When Tianxing comes back, we'll keep an eye on him. Whether it's by hitting him in the middle of the night or waiting for him to leave the city, there will always be a chance, Ling Han said. Only then did the large black dog calm down. He was too impatient. Apart from Tianxing, Ling Han also wanted to find He Yufeng. Back then, this person had used his power to bully others. Now that he also had the battle prowess of a quasi-celestial venerable, he wanted to see who was stronger. In the end, He Yufeng also ran out. This was a pattern. Now, they were chasing and killing, but after a while, when the frenzied army launched another wave of attacks, everyone would retreat back to the wall. Otherwise, they would become wandering soldiers and be instantly destroyed by the attack of the army. Over and over again it was like this. In order to prevent life from becoming too boring, introducing a competitive system was obviously a good idea. Thus, there was a ranking list that was based on the number and quality of enemies killed. Among the frenzied army here, there were ninth heavens and quasi-empyrean level powerhouses. Killing the same powerhouses would naturally result in different results. This also made it impossible for ninth firmament immortal monarchs to enter the rankings. The combat achievements rankings were a stage for quasi-heavenly venerables. Ling Han had nothing to do anyway, so he went. The ranking board was outside Dubhe, and there were 2 huge stone tablets that would only be updated once every 1,000 years. The last update was 999 years ago, which meant that the leaderboard could be updated at any time. It might even be tomorrow. Why are there 2 lists? One was the overall leaderboard, which counted the total historical battle achievements. The other was the current leaderboard. For example, some quasi-heavenly venerables who broke through to the Empyrean realm would go to the 2nd level and be removed from the current leaderboard. Ling Han first looked at the overall leaderboard. This was the strongest quasi-heavenly venerables since ancient times. A total of 1,000 people were selected. The reason why there were more people was probably because they wanted more people to have a sense of participation. Xen Chihu. He quickly found Xen Chihu's name on the 964th place, as well as a simple introduction of his battle achievements. 13, 54 million years, 3,567 quasi-heavenly venerables killed, 48,553 ninth heavens immortal kings killed. What surprised Ling Han was that Xen Chihu had become a quasi-heavenly venerate in such a short period of time, just over 10 million years. He was on the leaderboard in just over 10 million years. The 2 people below him had fought bloody battles for billions of years. It had to be known that being on the leaderboard meant that one's aptitude was amazing. One could definitely become an Empyrean. Wasn't such a comparison shocking? No wonder Lin Piaoxue thought so highly of him. Ling Han scanned the leaderboard again and found Lin Youyen's name. She was ranked 982. Her introduction was 12. 24 million years, 2,966 quasi-heavenly venerables killed, 84 ninth heavens immortal kings killed. It was equally shocking. However, the overall leaderboard didn't have much meaning. This was because some people stayed in the quasi-heavenly venerate realm for a long time, while others stayed for a short time. It was impossible to be fair. Therefore, the current leaderboard had a time limit. It only counted the battle achievements in the past million years and didn't accumulate. A million years was too short. Even super elites like Exain Chihu and Lin Yolian needed more than 10 million years to break through. Therefore, it could be said to be very fair. Ling Han wasn't interested in such a leaderboard. He only had one goal, to become a 7-step Empyrean. However, there's no harm in having a competition. How to calculate the battle achievements? Previously, after they reported, each of them would be given a ring. This was a special Dharma artifact that had a certain life-saving effect. In addition, it was used to count the number of enemies killed. It could be used to distinguish whether a 9th Heaven's immortal king or a quasi-heavenly venerate. It was said that some people kept a low profile and didn't want others to know their combat strength. They would take off their rings during battle, making it impossible to count their battle achievements. On the current leaderboard, Ling Han saw a familiar name. He Yufeng, but she was only ranked around 800. As for Tianxing, he was nameless. This was very normal. He was only at the 9th Heavens. So what if he could fight against quasi-heavenly venerables? Could he kill quasi-heavenly venerables? If he could only kill 9th Heaven's immortal kings, how many would he need to be on the leaderboard? The leaderboard can be updated at any time. That He Yufeng and Tianxing might rush back in the near future. Their rankings have changed. Ling Han murmured. He decided to stay in the city for the next few days until the leaderboard was updated. Then, if he left the city to fight, a new wave of war might have already been launched by the time he left. Young people, no matter how nonchalant they sounded, were actually very concerned about things like rankings. All of them had their own pride and didn't want to be inferior to others. Therefore, this was the year that the leaderboard was updated. Many people who had been training outside returned one after another. They didn't have a chance to make it to the overall leaderboard unless they had fought for countless years and were about to become a first-step heavenly venerate. Only then could they have the extravagant hope of making it to the leaderboard. Every day, a large number of young powerhouses returned. Some people clearly knew that it was impossible for them to make it to the leaderboard, but they were extremely curious and just wanted to know. 10 days, more and more people gathered in this city that didn't look like a city. Every day, Dubhe would check if the leaderboard had been updated. After another half a month, the leaderboard was finally updated. Fuck, who is this Ling Han? How did he quietly kill his way to the top of the leaderboard? How is this possible? The current leaderboard counts battle achievements within a million years. He wasn't on the leaderboard last time, which means that he jumped at least 1,000 places in the past 1,000 years. He went from not being on the leaderboard to being at the top. The crowd was in an uproar. Chapter 27-21. When a spiritual attack came over. Ling Han was unafraid. His body was like divine metal, and the spiritual attack was already ineffective against him. Pooh, the sword slashed down, and one of the octopus monster's tentacles was immediately severed as if it were made of tofu. He was so relaxed because he had a heavenly venerable treasure in his hands, but who else had such good fortune to forge a heavenly venerable treasure at pseudo-heavenly venerable or even 9th heaven level? Pung, 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 countless forces hit the octopus monster's tentacles, but it only caused the octopus monster's skin to cave in, and it was not damaged. Of course, there were also people who were very strong, and with a celestial tool, they still made the octopus monster bleed. This was only a monster, but it could rival at least a dozen pseudo-heavenly venerables. This battle prowess was really shocking. The octopus monster was furious, and several hundred tentacles spun together. Pung, 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 instantly caused huge destruction. Some houses were instantly razed, and some people were sent flying into the sky. If it was a 9th heaven celestial king, all the bones in their body would be directly shattered. Ling Han thought for a moment, and immediately retreated. With the Empress and the Rain Emperor here, he would have to worry about the rear. After all, these two were only at the peak stage of 8th heaven, and it was too dangerous. He could not kill too far away. He might as well be the two's bodyguard, but he would not act the moment they encountered danger. Instead, he would only act secretly when they were in danger of certain death. Furthermore, this was not to completely resolve the danger, but to turn a hopeless situation into a dangerous one. Only in this way could it have the effect of training. With the combined strength of several dozen pseudo-heavenly venerables, this octopus monster was quickly dealt with, but there were many such monsters in the city, and mushroom clouds soared into the sky everywhere. "Watch out, the Mangbull monster is coming." The voice had just fallen when peng, the city wall suddenly shook violently as if it had been heavily struck by some colossal monster. Thankfully, this city wall was sturdy enough, and it was not blasted through. "Watch out, it's coming again." Peng, there was another heavy sound. Not only was the city wall wailing, but even the earth was shaking. What the hell was this? After 100 times, there was a boom, and a large hole actually broke open in the city wall behind Ling Han, and a huge black bull crashed through half of its body. However, after this collision, the black yak was knocked unconscious as if he had died. Ling Han didn't hesitate at all, stabbing out with his sword. Pooh, the tip of the sword pierced through the big black yak's forehead, all the way to the hilt. The destructive power of a heavenly venerate entered the body, and this big black yak instantly died. But when Ling Han unsheathed his sword, the black yak actually moved. Could it be that the corpse came back to life? The black yak's corpse was whipped out with a whoosh, and a giant foot covered in white fur appeared at the opening. Ling Han approached and saw that it was a giant snowman. The big black yak was being held in its hands like a toy. Behind this snowman, there was a densely packed army of monsters that stretched as far as the eye could see. Although the city walls had unleashed waves of light and killed most of the monsters, there was still an endless stream of soldiers coming after them, as if there was no end to them. 3 small monsters appeared on the wall. They were like macaques, stretching out their small claws. Their bodies were only about 3 feet long, and they opened their blood-red eyes and stared at Ling Han. Shio, they quickly pounced over, their speed very fast. Ling Han shook his head, and let the Empress and the Rain Emperor deal with them. These were only 3 ninth heaven monsters, and he didn't need to personally deal with them. Battle. People were constantly injured, and people constantly fell. Blood covered the ground, and most of it came from the frenzied army. The blood was black, but there was also a portion that belonged to the defending army. Fortunately, this wave of battle only lasted for 3 days, and no more armies appeared afterward. A small number of fish that escaped the net began to retreat. After chasing for a while, everyone retreated into the city. After a great battle, they needed to take a good rest. Moreover, this battle only lasted for 3 days. According to past experience, this could only be considered as a prelude, and the battle that followed would be even more brutal. Thus, no one dared to take the risk of entering deeper. They didn't want to lose their lives like this. The Empress and the Rain Emperor both suffered considerable injuries. This was also because Ling Han didn't completely resolve the crisis for them, but after walking on the edge of life and death like this, the two of them faintly felt that they had touched the threshold of the 9th heaven. After a great battle, the most important thing was naturally to repair and recover. The city wall was the key to resisting the invasion of foreign enemies, and the damaged parts had to be repaired immediately. Otherwise, once the frenzied army attacked again, the damage caused would be too great, and they could only give up on this wall and retreat to the next one. The repair work had only been completed for 5 days, and the frenzied army launched a second wave of attack. Ling Han was still like this, mainly training the Rain Emperor and the Empress. Otherwise, he would only make a move when the monsters threatened the city's defenses. However, this attack still only lasted for 3 days. It's only 3 days again, and it's all small fights. But the more it's like this, the more terrifying the storm that will brew in the end will be. Let's hope the great storm comes soon, or else heaven knows how terrifying the damage will be. Everyone frowned. Previously, there had been 11 consecutive waves of small attacks, and the final great attack that brewed had killed several hundred quasi-heavenly venerables and countless 9th heaven celestial kings. Hopefully, the great attack that detonated this time wouldn't be so terrifying. Several hundred quasi-heavenly venerables? How many true celestial venerables could they become in the future? This was a great loss for the origin world, but for Frenzied, it only took a little time for it to recover. The small attacks continued, wave after wave, but the great attack that everyone was looking forward to and afraid of did not appear after a long time, causing everyone's hearts to become more and more tense. Ling Han didn't care about this. Under this kind of pressure of life and death for the Empress and the Rain Emperor, the gates of the ninth heaven were about to open. Maybe this time, maybe next time. However, after 9 waves of small attacks, the final great attack was finally brewed. A huge army of monsters attacked. Although the highest level was only quasi-heavenly venerables, the advantage in numbers was very obvious. A large number of monsters charged over the city walls and launched a fierce battle. This battle was a bloodbath that lasted for a whole month. There were even many celestial venerables who rushed over to join the battle as reinforcements. Although their battle prowess would be limited, they were still much stronger than ordinary quasi-heavenly venerables. Moreover, even if they could only unleash the power of quasi-heavenly venerables, it was still better to have one more, right? Fortunately, the walls didn't fall, and they still stabilized this front line, although they also paid the price of many elites dying. For Ling Han, the better news was that the Rain Emperor and the Empress could both break through. They made some slight preparations, and both broke through, stepping into the ninth heaven, similarly standing at the peak of the celestial Tao. At this time, the city also had a rare moment of relaxation. According to the rules, after the great attack, there would be a few years of peace. After all, Frenzied also needed time to accumulate the number of its troops. Thus, banquets were held one after another, and many prodigies took turns to treat others. They used this opportunity to chat and improve their relationship. Ling Han received an invitation, but the person who invited him was Lu Tianqian. Chapter 27-22. Lu Tianqian was actually inviting him? What was he up to? It should be related to Lin Piao Shui, the Empress said. Ling Han nodded. Otherwise, he and Lu Tianqian really hadn't interacted much. Are you going or not? The Empress asked. There's no harm in going. Ling Han smiled. In the first level, he should be invincible. Even a first-step heavenly venerable wouldn't be able to injure him. This was limited by the structure of heaven and earth. The Empress nodded. She naturally knew how powerful Ling Han was at present. The banquet was held one day later. On the second day, they packed up a little and then set out for Lu Tianqian's residence. In fact, this couldn't be considered a residence. It was only a very simple house, but because of the existence of a spatial god tool, this wasn't a problem. The interior could be decorated very luxuriously. There was someone standing guard at the door, and they would only be allowed to enter after receiving the invitation. Although this person was only in the ninth heaven, it was forbidden to cause trouble here. If one violated the rules in the academy, they might not be sentenced to death no matter how great the crime was because they had the backing of a heavenly venerable. They would only be thrown into the cemetery of a celestial king, but it was different here. If one committed a great crime, they would be directly executed. Because this was the front line of the battle, there definitely couldn't be the slightest bit of carelessness. Orders had to be strictly followed. Ling Han didn't want to violate this kind of rule either. He handed the invitation to the other person. After receiving it, the person made a gesture of invitation and allowed Ling Han and the Empress to enter. Ling Han and the Empress entered, and shockingly saw a door of light flickering. This was obviously the entrance to the spatial god tool. He and the Empress entered, and they felt their bodies tremble. They had already arrived at a new place. The sun hung high in this place, and the temperature was pleasant. The surroundings were filled with the fragrance of fresh flowers, and it was completely different from the barren hills and unruly rivers they had been in before. There were stone tables arranged on the grass, and they were of different sizes and colors. They looked like mushrooms. However, there was actually a pattern to this arrangement. The further in front, the bigger the table and the smaller the table. There should be a reason for this. Only those with status were qualified to sit at the big table, while nobodies could only sit at the small table. Before Ling Han could sit down, he saw Lu Tianqian walking over, surrounded by a group of people. Lu Tianqian had an arrogant expression on his face, which was completely different from how he had acted in front of Lin Piaoshui. This should be his true face. He was proud and arrogant, and he considered everyone beneath him. Where is Fairy Lin? Lu Tianqian immediately asked. Ling Han suddenly understood. Was this the reason why the other party invited him? The drunkard had ulterior motives. He shook his head. First, I don't know where Miss Lin is. Second, even if I knew, why would I tell you? Lu Tianqian was taken aback. A ninth firmament immortal king actually dared to talk back to him? Who did this kid think he was? How audacious! How dare you speak to young Master Lu in such a manner? A man jumped out from behind Lu Tianqian. He was a ninth firmament immortal king, but his clan was inferior to the Lu family. Therefore, he was willing to be a pawn. And what are you? The Empress asked menacingly as she stepped forward. A man that dared to shout at her? The man glanced at the Empress, and his aura involuntarily froze. How many men could resist the temptation of the Empress's stunning beauty? He was just about to lose himself in her beauty, yet the Empress had already made a move. She sent him flying with a slap through the air. Lu Tianqian's expression involuntarily changed. This person was far too arrogant. He actually dared to make a move at his banquet. However, the Empress was extremely beautiful, and her bearing was unparalleled. It was actually difficult for him to even get angry. This woman was far too beautiful. She was probably comparable to that legendary supreme flower, the most outstanding little princess of the Lin clan, Lin Yulian. He came back to his senses and said, "Miss, you've gone too far." Thankfully, the person who had made a move was the Empress. If it had been Ling Han, he definitely wouldn't have been polite, and would have directly made a move to capture him. Ling Han chuckled and said, "What's wrong with a sparring match?" He directly defined this matter as a sparring match. Otherwise, others would be able to find out about this. Aren't you embarrassed to let a woman stand up for you? Lu Tianqian asked calmly. He turned around and said, "Gang Dong, come and spar with this person." Even now, he still didn't know Ling Han's name. This was because he didn't take Ling Han seriously at all. He didn't even have the interest to know his name. Otherwise, he would definitely know that the person standing in front of him was Ling Han, who had been in the limelight recently. Of course, even if he knew, he wouldn't have any misgivings. This was because everyone thought that Ling Han had gotten a great bargain. If he relied on his true abilities, how could he possibly be a match for a pseudo-celestial venerable? A man immediately stepped forward. He was extremely tall and sturdy, and there was actually a golden horn growing from his head. The Empress was excited. She had just advanced to the ninth heaven, and her fighting spirit was high. She didn't say anything and directly made her move. The one-horned man hadn't thought that the Empress would actually act without any regard for the rules. He was slightly flustered, but it was only for an instant. He immediately stabilized his footing and launched a counterattack. Boom! The two elites clashed, instantly creating a terrifying shockwave. Lu Tianqian hurriedly moved to extinguish the shockwave. Otherwise, this was only a spatial god tool, so how could it withstand the collision of two ninth heaven elites? It would definitely have been destroyed long ago. Fortunately, he was a pseudo-celestial venerable. Otherwise, if he was only a ninth heaven celestial king, he wouldn't have been able to handle it. Although the Empress had just advanced to the ninth heaven, her battle prowess was extraordinary. She quickly took the initiative, and her advantage was obvious. Lu Tianqian was astonished. He hadn't thought that a delicate beauty like the Empress would also have such amazing talent in martial art. A hint of admiration flashed through his eyes, but he immediately hid it. His target was Lin Piaoshui, a noble daughter of the Lin clan. If he could marry her, it would be very meaningful. This battle also attracted the attention of many people nearby, and they all gathered to watch. They nodded incessantly. They were both shocked by the Empress's strength, and also moved by her stunning beauty. All of them supported the Empress. After 500 moves, the single-horned man had no choice but to admit defeat. Otherwise, he would be beaten very badly. This result was already within everyone's expectations, but when the single-horned man admitted defeat, they still couldn't help but feel astonished. After reaching the ninth heaven, There were basically no mediocre people. No matter what, they had to have the aptitude of a monarch tier. Moreover, the Empress had clearly just advanced to the 9th heaven, yet she possessed such astonishing battle prowess. Her talent in martial art was far too terrifying. Lu Tianxian smiled and asked, "How should I address you, young lady? What does my wife's name have to do with you?" Ling Han said with a flick of his sleeve, "How boring. This is a complete waste of time." "How arrogant." A woman jumped out and said, "You only know how to let women stand up for you. How shameless." Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "I can't help it. I'm lucky to have found such a good wife." The Empress couldn't help but smile when she heard this. The iceberg melted, and her beauty was indescribable. Everyone's heart thumped wildly. This beauty was so beautiful that even their souls were about to melt. "Hee, the banquet has just begun, so what's the rush?" Someone said with a smile, trying to smooth things over. They didn't want such a beautiful woman to leave early. Chapter 27-23. Ling Han couldn't stand these people. They had only survived a frenzied wave of attacks, so what was there to be proud of? Indeed, surviving was something to be happy about, but as for holding a banquet, it was as if they had won a great battle. Ling Han believed that in the 2nd and 3rd levels, there shouldn't be such a pompous atmosphere. He shook his head. He had wanted to know what Lu Tianxian had done, but the result was very disappointing. It was just to pick up girls. He shook his head and said to the Empress, "Let's go." "Hey, what's the hurry?" Someone reached out to stop them. This was not Lu Tianxian's follower, but a pseudo-heavenly venerable. He smiled at Ling Han, but his eyes were filled with disdain. His name was Nong Gaolin, and not only was he a pseudo-heavenly venerable, but his father was also a 3rd-step heavenly venerable, and his background was not inferior to Lu Tianxian's. Lu Tianxian naturally wouldn't just invite some of his subordinates. This kind of gathering didn't have any dignity, so prodigies like Nong Gaolin who could sit on equal footing with him were invited. First, they might not give him face, and second, even if they came, they would have to lower their heads in front of them. If they were pressured by a guest, they would make things difficult for themselves, so why bother? Ling Han's eyes turned cold. "Are you provoking me?" Private fights were prohibited here, but self-defense was not prohibited. The party who provoked them would have to bear all the consequences. "Hee, we are all comrades. Why harm the harmony?" Another person came out to smooth things over. Come. Everyone should sit down. Not everyone is here. Why do people want to leave already? That's right, there will be many people this time. For example, He Yufeng, who is ranked 862nd on the live rankings. Ling Han originally wanted to leave, but when he heard He Yufeng's name, he stopped in his tracks. He Yufeng, they would finally meet again. The Empress nodded at him, indicating that he would make the decision. Ling Han smiled and took the Empress's hand as they walked forward. Since he had decided to stay, he naturally had to find the best place to sit. When Ling Han pulled the Empress forward, everyone was surprised. Did they want to sit at the large table? Quasi-Empyreans sat at the large table while 9th Firmament Immortal Monarchs sat at the small table. This was an unspoken rule. This kid is too insensible. Does he really think he's the overlord here? Lu Tianxian wanted to say something, but he hesitated. He did not know the relationship between Lin Piaoxue, Ling Han, and the others. To be on the safe side, it was better for him not to be the villain. Ling Han was so arrogant that he would definitely be hated by others. All he had to do was act. In the future, even if Lin Piaoxue got angry, she couldn't blame him. After all, Ling Han was too arrogant. Yes, not only could he not be angry, but he also had to try his best to protect Ling Han on the surface. Then Lin Piaoxue would have to be grateful to him. That's a good idea. With that in mind, he naturally wouldn't open his mouth. He even used his gaze to suppress the words that the people behind him were about to speak. Ling Han pulled the Empress to the front row. Only then did he sit down with her. An exquisite fruit platter had already been placed on the table. The fruits were bright and fragrant. He very attentively helped the Empress peel the fruit and put the flesh into her mouth. The Empress smiled and opened her mouth to take a bite. It was a display of affection. This scene made people like Nong Gaolin very unhappy. You're just a pretty boy. You're acting arrogant and domineering just because you're a woman. You're even showing off your affection in public. You're too arrogant. They all took their seats. If they weren't beside Ling Han, they would be behind him. There weren't many large tables. Lu Tianqian only invited about 20 quasi-heavenly venerables. Most of them were ninth firmament immortal monarchs. These quasi-heavenly venerables were like stars surrounding the moon. Because the number of quasi-heavenly venerables was limited, the number of large tables was also corresponding. Once everyone took their seats, there were no empty seats left. Ling Han sat in the seat that belonged to He Yufeng. He hadn't arrived yet. Some quasi-heavenly venerables couldn't help but ask. A ninth firmament immortal monarch was worthy of sitting on equal footing with them. What virtue or ability do you have to sit on equal footing with us? He asked. His voice was languid, and his eyes were fixed on the sky. His meaning was that he was completely disdainful of Ling Han. Ling Han nodded. Indeed. I feel that it's very degrading to sit with trash like you. The quasi-heavenly venerable jumped to his feet and pointed angrily at Ling Han. What? Do you want to fight? Ling Han asked with a smile. Lu Tianqian hurriedly stepped forward to mediate. Please calm down, both of you. He looked at Ling Han. However, he suddenly realized that he still didn't know the latter's name. He couldn't be bothered to ask. Apologize to Brother Wu. Ling Han merely glanced at Lu Tianqian like he was an idiot. Lu Tianqian almost exploded in anger. However, when he thought of his previous plan, he forcefully suppressed his anger. Your personality. Brother Lu, this person doesn't seem to appreciate your good intentions, said the Brother Wu from before. The Brother Wu from before said. His name was Wu Yuanqing, and his eyes were fixed on Ling Han. In his mind, however, he was thinking about how he could spar with Ling Han and then teach him a ruthless lesson. Lu Tianqian merely chuckled and said, I have some sort of relationship with this person, so I had no choice but to advise him. He had only said that they had some sort of relationship, but the Hidden Bureau had said that if they really wanted to fight, he wouldn't stop them. Wu Yuanqing, Nong Gaolin, and the others were all thinking about how they could force Ling Han to exchange pointers. Otherwise, if he bullied the weak for no reason, he would be heavily punished. He Yufeng, young master, he has arrived, someone shouted, breaking the silence. He Yufeng. Is that He Yufeng who's currently on the rankings? He's a true genius, and his father is even a fourth step heavenly venerable. For a moment, everyone was a little excited. This was definitely the most important guest of the day. They saw a young man striding over. He was clearly tall and slender, but he exuded a majestic and domineering aura that made people involuntarily admire him. It was He Yufeng. Brother He. Lu Tianqian immediately stood up from his seat of honor and walked over to greet him. He Yufeng only nodded in a reserved manner. He wasn't qualified to attend a banquet of this level, but he had a good personal relationship with Lu Tianqian. Since the other party had spoken, He Yufeng had no choice but to come and support him. Brother He, I'm really sorry. I made a mistake when arranging seats today. How about you and I sit together at the head of the table? Lu Tianqian said deliberately. What's going on? He Yufeng asked. How could he make a mistake when arranging seats? There's a fellow who doesn't know what's good for him. He's clearly just a 9th-level celestial king, but he insists on sitting together with a quasi-heavenly venerable. However, he seems to have some sort of relationship with Fairy Lin, so I can't really say anything, Lu Tianqian said. He Yufeng's face couldn't help but darken. Although there were many women with the surname Lin, there was only one who could bear the title of Fairy Lin. Lin Piaoxue, he said in a low voice. That's right. Lu Tianqian nodded. He Yufeng immediately strode over to the end of the table. Who else could the person who had occupied his seat be but Ling Han? As expected, you're still as arrogant as ever, He Yufeng said coldly. Ling Han was someone he had to get rid of no matter what. His level of monstrousness even surpassed his own. Chapter 27-25. A beautiful romance. Who could have imagined such a result? A quasi-heavenly venerate said that he would let an immortal king make 9 moves. Everyone thought that this was a matter of course. Let alone 9 moves, even 900 moves would not be an exaggeration. But in the end, after only 6 moves, the quasi-heavenly venerate had no choice but to break the agreement and counterattack. How could there be such a powerful immortal king? Come on, I'm not interested in taking advantage of you, Ling Han said lightly and crooked his finger at He Yufeng. Since He Yufeng had already made his move, he naturally would no longer be reserved. What was there to pretend about? Ling Han, I underestimate you, he said in a low voice. Ling Han shook his head. That's not what I want to hear. What do you want to hear? He Yufeng asked. You owe me an apology, Ling Han said seriously. Previously, He Yufeng had relied on his status as a quasi-heavenly venerate and a father who was a 4th-step heavenly venerate to wantonly break the rules of the academy, forcing him to lower his head and become a servant, and even wanting to kill him. This was unfair, and what Ling Han hated the most was unfairness. Thus, he wanted an explanation. A puny 9th heaven. He Yufeng's face was full of disgust. Even though Ling Han had already proven his strength, he still felt that Ling Han was not worthy of him. This was the pride of a quasi-heavenly venerate. I'll beat you until you admit defeat. Peng, Ling Han's feet shot forward, and he charged toward He Yufeng. He Yufeng naturally would not be afraid, and he fought Ling Han head-on. The 2 quasi-heavenly venerates fought fiercely. Both sides had the determination to not lose, and they both went all out, not holding back with each move, fighting until their blood boiled. In terms of battle prowess, the 2 of them were about the same. They were both quasi-celestial venerable late stage, but Ling Han's physique was incomparably tyrannical, comparable to immortal gold. Even if he didn't resist, it would be extremely difficult for He Yufeng to use brute force to break through. Moreover, with Ling Han's recovery ability, he might not be able to injure Ling Han at all. Therefore, the more they fought, the more He Yufeng was at a disadvantage. Ling Han was completely unafraid of exchanging injury for injury, but He Yufeng was full of misgivings. He didn't dare to fight head-on with Ling Han. This determined that he began to fight timidly. Bam! He Yufeng finally took a punch from Ling Han and instantly staggered backwards. His face flushed red, and then he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he had no time to catch his breath. Ling Han's attack came again, and he had no choice but to receive it. Bam! After dozens of moves, He Yufeng took another punch. Fortunately, whether it was him or Ling Han, it was impossible for them to constantly use their Empyrean Paragon technique. Therefore, this punch wasn't unleashed with the 9 transformations heaven scripture or the 5 elemental lightning technique. Bang bang bang. He Yufeng was continuously struck, and he also spat out blood. He Yufeng, do you remember what I said? When a man is angry, blood can be spilled 3 feet long. Ling Han said. Now, I have another sentence for you. Life is full of ups and downs. Don't bully the young for being poor. He Yufeng shouted loudly. He was incomparably angry. How could he endure being taught a lesson by a mere 9th-level celestial king? Little brat, you're going too far. He roared angrily. He desperately wanted to counterattack, but he was completely powerless to reverse the situation. Facing Ling Han, who had an immortal gold physique and quasi-celestial venerable battle prowess, it was useless no matter how hard he tried. Lower your head and admit your mistake. I'm not going too far, said Ling Han. Don't even think about it. He Yufeng gritted his teeth. He would rather die than submit. Then I'll beat you until you do. Ling Han punched out mercilessly. He Yufeng's bones were broken, but he was extremely unyielding. He didn't even let out a grunt. But so what? Would Ling Han go soft? Finally, He Yufeng couldn't help but groan in pain. His injuries were too severe. Enough! Nong Gaolin rushed into the sky. He absolutely wouldn't allow Ling Han to defeat He Yufeng. This wouldn't just be He Yufeng's defeat, but also a humiliation for the entire quasi-celestial venerable circle. A quasi-celestial venerable was inferior to a 9th-level celestial? What kind of joke was this? Fine, come at me together. Ling Han laughed loudly, completely fearless. His physique was too tyrannical. Even when fighting 1 against 2, he wasn't at a disadvantage. His goal was very clear. He was going to attack He Yufeng. As for Nong Gaolin, he completely ignored him, allowing him to attack as he pleased. Everyone couldn't help but feel their scalps go numb. 2 quasi-celestial venerables actually couldn't stop Ling Han. Heavens, what kind of monster was this? Wu Yuanqing hesitated for a moment, but then he also charged towards Ling Han, preventing Ling Han from continuing his murder. But it was still useless. Ling Han's physique was already tyrannical to the point where he didn't fear the attacks of quasi-celestials. Their attacks could only leave behind several dents on Ling Han's body, but before they could continue attacking, these dents had already rapidly recovered. Was this still a human? He was simply a monster. Lu Tianqian also joined the battle. There were even more quasi-celestial venerables. They were already in deep trouble. If even so many quasi-celestial venerables couldn't stop Ling Han, then how could they raise their heads in the future? Attack together. The remaining quasi-celestial venerables also attacked. It had to be said that the combined strength of over 20 quasi-celestial venerables was truly too powerful. Even if they couldn't injure Ling Han, they could easily stop him. As long as each of them punched out, they would be able to form a terrifying power that would force Ling Han back. He Yufeng had finally escaped from danger. Ling Han stood still and didn't attack again. It was actually very simple for him to break this stalemate. He only had to draw out the divine demon sword. With a paragon treasure tool in hand, he was invincible, and these quasi-celestial venerables could only scatter and flee. But once the divine demon sword was drawn, they would either die or be injured, and the consequences wouldn't be as simple as a spar. Right now, Ling Han only wanted to teach He Yufeng a lesson and didn't plan to get himself killed. He Yufeng. Ling Han stood in the air, looking down from above. Right now, you're regretting using your power to bully others. One day, you'll be bullied by others. Are you convinced? He Yufeng gritted his teeth. He was naturally not convinced, but his skills were inferior, so what was the use of being stubborn? In the past, though Ling Han had lost to him, he was only a 7th heaven celestial king. Even though he had been defeated, it was still an honorable defeat, but now? Ling Han was only a 9th heaven celestial king, but had relied on brute force to defeat him. What could he say? Saying another word now would only cause him to suffer more humiliation. Ling Han laughed loudly, descended, and said, "Wife, let's go." The Empress nodded, and left hand in hand with Ling Han. Everyone was still in a state of shock. A 9th heaven celestial king actually pointed at a quasi-celestial venerable's nose and taught him a lesson, and even made him speechless. This was unprecedented. How can a 9th heaven celestial king be so strong? This was what everyone was even more confused about. Yes, he's ridiculously strong. It's completely impossible. Everyone shook their heads. How could there be such a powerful 9th heaven celestial king in this world? Someone sighed and said, "It's possible, but such geniuses are far too rare." How is it possible? No one believed it. That person said, "Have you forgotten Lin Yu Lian and Xen Chihu? Those 2 lords." Everyone gasped. Lin and Xen were absolute legends. Being able to enter the overall rankings and in such a short time was naturally a miracle that would be celebrated for thousands of years. Moreover, these 2 people's battle records were truly earned, and there was no exaggeration at all. Chapter 27-26. A good story. You only know that Lord Lin and Lord Xin are powerful, but do you know why they are so powerful? The person who spoke before said slowly. His name was Zhao Fukong, and he was also a quasi-heavenly venerate. The Zhao family's ancestor was only a 2nd-step heavenly venerate, but he was known as Bai Shaoxing. He was very knowledgeable about other heavenly venerates, mainly because he was a gossipy person. "Brother Zhao, please explain." Lu Tianqian and the others asked. Zhao Fukong nodded. Everyone knows that in order to become a quasi-heavenly venerate, one needs to draw upon the unique power of heaven and earth to temper one's body. When one can use this power, that is when one becomes a heavenly venerate. This was something that everyone knew, so they naturally didn't show any expression. They continued to listen to him. However, there are some people with extraordinary talent. They can draw upon the intrinsic power of the origin world when they are at the peak of the 9th level, or even earlier, to temper their bodies in advance. Well, it was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. Everyone immediately widened their eyes, unable to believe what they had heard. Was this a joke? The path of martial art was a gradual process. Just like how an immortal king needed to cultivate one level at a time, it was impossible to directly leap from the 1st level to the 5th level. Therefore, how could anyone believe that someone could use the intrinsic power of the origin world to temper their bodies before the 9th level, or even before becoming an immortal king? Moreover, these were 6 great intrinsic powers. Not even a 1st-step heavenly venerate could sense them. If they could sense them, then they would be a 2nd-step heavenly venerate. The Arabian Nights was a complete joke. Zhao Fukang just smiled and didn't care at all. He continued, with some kind of lucky coincidence, coupled with one's own monstrous talent, it is indeed possible. Think about it. How powerful is it to temper one's body with intrinsic power? Although Ling Han's cultivation is only at the 9th level, his intrinsic power is that of a quasi-heavenly venerate. Moreover, he is tempered by the intrinsic power of the origin world, so his strength is stronger than a quasi-heavenly venerate of the same level. Unless you also use the intrinsic power of the origin world to take this step. When he finished speaking, the entire audience fell silent. How could they defeat such a monster? However, you don't have to be depressed. Zhao Fukang changed the topic again. Although Ling Han is strong now and can still laugh at the world after becoming a 1st-step heavenly venerate, he will be no different from other heavenly venerates of the same level after becoming a 2nd-step heavenly venerate. At that time, everyone would have grasped the intrinsic power of the origin world. Coupled with the unique power of the plane, there would naturally be no difference in strength. Everyone nodded, but they quickly shook their heads. Becoming a 2nd-step heavenly venerable was easier said than done. Most of the people here might not even be able to become a quasi-Empyrean, and even if they did, it wouldn't be a problem for them to become an Empyrean. However, if they wanted to reach the 2nd step, if they were lucky, 1 in 10 people here could do it. In other words, at least 90% of them would forever be crushed by Ling Han, and they would never be able to surpass Ling Han. Just thinking about it was depressing. Sigh. Someone sighed. AI. Even more people sighed. After this battle, Ling Han's name once again shook the stronghold. Previously, he had indeed become famous. However, everyone thought that he had been extremely lucky to be able to kill over 10,000 quasi-Empyreans and enter the overall rankings. Now, however, he had single-handedly fought Lu Tianqian and 20 other quasi-Empyreans, beating He Yufeng so badly that she didn't dare to accept his challenge. What kind of strength was this? How domineering was this? How many quasi-Empyreans could do this? When the news that Ling Han was only a 9th heaven celestial king spread, everyone was even more shocked. However, some people also scoffed. Wasn't this a joke? It had to be a huge joke. Someone had deliberately done this to boost Ling Han's reputation. For example, the matter of the rankings. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell at a glance. However, Ling Han didn't care about this at all. He only wanted to vent his anger. Previously, He Yufeng had tried to kill him, so he would settle this debt with her in the future. He would collect the debt that he owed him sooner or later. The large black dog suddenly walked over and said, "Little Han, it's time to move out." Ling Han raised an eyebrow. "We've naturally left the city?" The large black dog nodded vigorously and said, "This day has finally come." Previously, he had been monitoring Ling Han this entire time. Once he left the city, he immediately came to find Ling Han. "Let's go," Ling Han said with a nod. 1 man and 1 dog set out. They didn't bring the Empress or the Rain Emperor with them. It was enough for the 2 of them to deal with this matter. The large black dog was an expert in tracking. Along the way, he lowered his head and kicked his butt. From time to time, he would sniff the air before continuing on his way. After over 20 days, they arrived at a mountain valley. Ping, ping, pung. The sounds of battle could be heard coming from within. They walked over, only to see that Ling Han was currently battling with a snowman monster. This snowman monster was several thousand meters tall, and possessed battle prowess on the level of a quasi-heavenly venerable tier. Although Ling Han had already reached the 9th heaven, his battle prowess hadn't reached the level of a quasi-heavenly venerable tier. In other words, he was only slightly inferior. However, even with the overwhelming advantage in battle prowess, Ling Han was still able to fight back and forth. This was naturally due to his physique. Even if he suffered a heavy blow, or even a large hole opened up in his chest, he would still be able to immediately recover. This was far too exhausting. If this continued, there would come a day when this snowman monster would be exhausted to death. However, a quasi-heavenly venerable tier was still a quasi-heavenly venerable tier. Without 8 to 10 years of battle, it would be impossible for him to defeat this snowman monster. Of course, Ling Han wasn't interested in waiting for so many years. He was just about to stand up and join the battle when he saw Ling Han's body suddenly expand, becoming over 900 meters tall. Then, he transformed into a piece of cloth that wrapped around the snowman monster. Upon seeing this, Ling Han couldn't help but stop for a moment. He continued. The piece of cloth that Ling Han had transformed into was astonishingly large. At their level, size wasn't the key. They could transform with a single thought. Therefore, the piece of cloth that he had transformed into was also incomparably large. In an instant, it surrounded the snowman monster. The snowman struggled with all its might, but the toughness of immortal gold and Ling Han's strength firmly bound the snowman monster. This piece of cloth quickly wrapped around the snowman monster tightly. Then, Ling Han suddenly returned to his original state, and his belly bulged out. He had basically eaten the snowman monster. This was very shocking. A 9th heaven celestial king had actually swallowed a quasi-heavenly venerable tier. Ling Han's belly suddenly bulged out. That was the snowman that he had swallowed, trying its best to fight back, trying to break free. However, Ling Han's belly was incomparably tough, and the snowman didn't break free. He snorted, and layers of black gas emanated from his body. He looked a little like those celestial kings who had been infected by the frenzied mental energy. However, he clearly maintained his consciousness. Runes appeared on his body. These runes surpassed the laws and were extremely profound. This monster is a little strong. I'll need at least 10,000 years to refine it, Ling Han muttered. However, if I have a few more of them, I'll be able to become a quasi-heavenly venerable tier. I'm sorry to inform you, but that's no longer possible, Ling Han said leisurely. Who is it? Ling Han immediately turned around. He was now thousands of meters tall, and his shout was extremely loud. Chapter 27:27. It's your grandpa dog. The large black dog immediately scurried out and howled. Hurry up and commit suicide, and let the heavenly venerable born fate incarnation come out, or grandpa dog will beat you to death. Tian Sheng placed his hands behind his back. I wasn't afraid of you even when I was just born, let alone now, Ling Han. Come out. He knew that the voice just now wasn't from the large black dog. Ling Han smiled faintly and appeared on the mountain top. Tian Sheng's body was huge now, and even standing in the valley, he wasn't much lower than him. He looked coldly at Ling Han. Not killing you back then was indeed my biggest miscalculation. Ling Han shook his head. Many people have said this to me, but their biggest miscalculation is that they shouldn't have met me at all. How arrogant, Tian Sheng said. This is confidence. Ling Han was still calm. Back then, even if he teamed up with Ji Wuming, Fire Hibiscus, and the others, they still weren't Tian Sheng's match, but now he was equal in cultivation level, and there was no longer any disadvantage. It was my biggest regret that I didn't devour your bloodline back then, but I didn't think that you would deliver yourself to me. Not bad. Tian Sheng nodded, full of confidence. Are you done talking nonsense? Hurry up and return the heavenly venerable born fate incarnation. The large black dog attacked first. Tian Sheng humphed and struck out with a palm. The two ninth heaven elites clashed, instantly causing a huge commotion. However, although the man and the dog were both knocked back a few hundred miles, they were both unharmed. Your physique. Tianxing was surprised, and immediately blurted out, "You've cultivated the indestructible immortal gold body." He had a sliver of the heavenly venerable born fate incarnation's divine sense, and naturally knew of the existence of the indestructible heaven scroll. The large black dog was proud. "You bastard isn't the only one with a celestial king-level physique." Tianxing frowned slightly, but immediately relaxed. "Then it can only be refined by me." He attacked again, grabbing at the large black dog. However, the large black dog had long since reached the peak stage of the ninth heaven, and he had also learned various theories from Wall. He was only a step away from becoming a pseudo-celestial tier deity, and his battle prowess was also extraordinary. In particular, his physique had reached the level of divine metal, so he was naturally even more fearless. Similarly, he naturally possessed immortal gold rank defense. Although the two of them were fighting incredibly intensely, it was a stalemate where neither of them could injure the other. It was just a meaningless show. Fight, fight, fight. They fought until the sky was dark, but there was no result. Natural-born's stomach was shaking crazily. There was a half-heavenly deity locked up inside, his strength great, enough to cause great damage even to immortal gold. Normally it would not be a problem. Combining his own strength was enough to suppress him. But now, he had to fight against a level 9 peak master. Attacking from the inside and outside was a little unbearable. Several times, his stomach was torn open by a claw, allowing the great snow monster to rush out. He forced it back in, but his strength was not as strong as he wished. He looked at Ling Han. This person had not made a move yet. If he joined forces with the large black dog, it would be impossible for him to digest the thing in his stomach. He needed an extremely quiet environment. Pooh! Natural-born stretched his body, once again transforming into a golden skin, and spat out the thing in his stomach. The great snow monster instantly broke free, howling loudly. Natural-born's body changed to a normal size again. This could reduce the area he would be attacked. Otherwise, it would be very disadvantageous in battle. Peng the great snow monster stomped down, landing on natural-born. However, its foot was too big, and even the large black dog was under the attack of this foot. "Ugly big guy, why are you stepping on me?" The large black dog hurriedly dodged. Although his body was like divine metal, and this foot would definitely not kill him, he would definitely be squashed flat. That would be very painful. The great snow monster ignored him, and continued to stomp on him, treating natural-born and the large black dog the same way. They were from two different worlds in the first place. With the interference of the great snow monster, the battle became even more complicated. It was a chaotic battle between the three sides, and it was very lively. Ling Han roared, and charged toward the great snow monster. He punched out repeatedly, and each of his punches was incredibly domineering. The snow monster was very powerful, but its defenses were far from reaching the level of divine metal. Under Ling Han's frenzied bombardment, one of its legs was quickly broken. Ping! Its body suddenly tilted, and it fell to the ground. Ling Han gave it another vicious beating. The great snow monster's head exploded, and it died completely. Clean and efficient. Natural-born's expression instantly changed. This battle prowess was far too powerful, and it had completely exceeded his expectations. He was also a ninth heaven celestial king, and he was the incarnation of the will of the heaven and earth, yet he was actually weaker than Ling Han. "I regret it more and more," Natural-born said. "Even if you were swept away by the spatial turbulence, I should have continued to chase after you and killed you." Back then, he had also been affected by the spatial turbulence. If he had risked some injuries and consumed some of his essence, he could have chased after Ling Han. However, he felt that it was not worth it, and so he allowed the spatial turbulence to sweep Ling Han away. In his opinion, Ling Han should not have been able to escape this calamity. He did not expect that not only was Ling Han not dead, but he was also now stronger than him. Ling Han smiled faintly. Now that we are both ninth heavens, come, let's have a fair battle. Let's see who is stronger. Natural Born sneered. I admit that you are a monster, but you will never be able to compare to the heaven and earth. He suddenly opened his mouth, and it became incomparably huge. He swallowed Ling Han. Ling Han had seen this move before. Even a quasi-celestial venerable great snow monster had been swallowed by it. It was truly powerful. For a moment, he did not want to take it head-on, so he dodged. Oh, so what if you are a plane incarnation? Guess. Natural Born did not answer, and he only continued to bite at Ling Han. Ling Han's heart churned, and he muttered, planes can devour each other to raise their own level. In that case, you might also have this ability. Natural Born could not help but be stunned. He did not expect Ling Han to be right. Just now, you ate a quasi-celestial venerable. I think you wanted to refine it, but we stopped you, so you had to stop. Ling Han continued to guess along this line of thought. Hey, could it be that one day you can become the second madness? This was not an idea that Natural Born had. Yifeng was the same. He had obtained a tentacle of madness, and he had spent several epochs to study it. He had assimilated himself with madness, and he also had the ability to devour. Therefore, it was very easy for Ling Han to come up with such a guess. Natural Born, however, did not know. He was dumbfounded. In his mind, this was a great secret that only he knew. He did not expect that Ling Han would casually guess it, and he could not react for a moment. This was like a person who had dug up a gem with great difficulty and wanted to show it off to his friends, only to find that the road in his friend's house was paved with this kind of gem. That sudden sense of loss was really sour. He took a deep breath, and only then did he suppress his emotions. He shouted, even if you know, so what? If I eat you, you can only become my nourishment. Is that so? Ling Han chuckled, and drew out the divine demon sword. Why don't you try? Chapter 27-29. Kill him, stab him with your sword if you can. Tianxing laughed loudly. Don't forget, Yuanxing and I share this body. If I die, it's equivalent to him dying as well. The large black dog leaped over, pacing around anxiously. Little Han, what do we do? Ling Han smiled faintly. If we really can't save the heavenly venerable fate-born, then we can only erase this person. Tianxing was the incarnation of the plane, so his thoughts were definitely different from normal people. If he continued to grow stronger, he definitely wouldn't resist madness, but instead wanted to become the second madness. Perhaps he would even want to destroy madness in the end and dominate the origin world. It was also simple to kill someone. He only needed to take off his and the other's ring before killing them. When Tianxing heard Ling Han's cold voice, he couldn't help but shiver inwardly. Ling Han really wanted to kill him and wasn't just scaring him. What to do? He didn't want to die. Don't you want to save Yuanxing? He called out. This was his only hope. The large black dog also jumped up and down. Although Tianxing was captured by them, how to save the heavenly venerable fate-born was a big problem. Ling Han smiled, stretched out his leg, and the black tower landed in his hand. He couldn't help but feel rueful. After more than 100 million years, the black tower had finally returned. All right, I'll give you this heavenly venerable treasure tool, Tianxing said. I can erase the martial art intent on it, and make it completely separate from me. How about it, a heavenly venerable treasure tool in exchange for my life? You've really made a great deal. He was flexible. In his opinion, as long as he was given time to grow, his future achievements wouldn't be lower than madnesses. All the elites in the world were just his nourishment. Ling Han cracked a smile, and suddenly swung the black tower at Tianxing. Moreover, it was aimed at Tianxing's head. With a clang, Tianxing became dizzy. What kind of power did Ling Han have? If he had used his full strength in this attack, with the destructive power of a heavenly venerable treasure tool, Tianxing's head would have long become a pile of paste. However, Ling Han did not intend to kill Tianxing. Therefore, he controlled his strength and only injured Tianxing. This was like using a wooden stick to hit an ordinary person. Using a little more strength could indeed kill a person, but if one controlled their strength, They could knock someone unconscious, make them dizzy, or just bleed. Ling Han used the second kind of strength, hitting Tianxing until he was dizzy and bleeding. Under such a blow, there was no way he could control himself. How could he kill the heavenly lord of fate-born soul? Furthermore, the Black Tower had been personally refined by the heavenly venerable fate birth. This kind of attack would innately wound him, but it would definitely have no effect on the heavenly venerable fate birth soul. Just like that, he would slowly erase his innate soul. What would be left would naturally be the remnant soul of the original born heavenly lord. Even if it was just a tiny bit, and he would be very weak when he was revived, he would still be able to recover as long as he had enough time. The large black dog had clearly thought of this as well, and he couldn't help but clap his paws together. Wonderful, wonderful! Previously, this tactic could not be carried out because Ling Han's strength was inferior to Tianxing's. Now that his combat strength had surpassed Tianxing's, this method became feasible and effective. The heavy blows came one after another. Though Tianxing knew that this was inappropriate, how could he possibly control his own body? It was as if someone was holding a gong next to his ear and beating it with all their might. It was so dizzying that he could not form any thoughts at all. He could only let out a furious roar like this, and he immediately stopped. Quang, there was only the sound of this kind of collision. So what if he had a body of divine metal? Under the collision of a heavenly venerable treasure, he could only tremble. However, Tianxing was really able to hold on. 10 days, 1 month, half a year. He was still holding on bitterly, and did not collapse. Ling Han naturally did not lack patience. To say nothing of half a year, he would continue to hold on like this even if it was 1,000 years, or 10 million years. He owed the heavenly venerable fate-born 2 lives, so how could he possibly not even have this kind of patience? 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Tianxing really could not hold on any longer. Under the continuous collisions of the Black Tower, there were multiple cracks all over his body, and golden blood flowed from them. This was already because Ling Han was being lenient. Otherwise, it was possible that Tianxing would directly shatter into pieces with a single collision from the Black Tower. He cursed, and his whole body glowed with a black light. He was going to fight to the death. He was not fighting to the death with Ling Han, but rather wanted to completely wipe out the remnant soul of the heavenly venerable fate-born. Still trying to be fierce? Ling Han smirked coldly. Quang, the Black Tower delivered another heavy blow. Tianxing's body shuddered violently, and his 4 legs drooped as if he were a dead man. Quang Quang Quang. Ling Han knocked a few more times, but Tianxing had already stopped reacting. He would only tremble slightly after his collision. You killed him? The large black dog asked. Ling Han nodded. Tianxing's soul should be dead, but whether the heavenly venerable fate-born can come back to life or not will depend on his luck. The main thing was that if the strength of this remnant soul was too weak, then it would only be a candle in the wind, and would very soon be extinguished. This required the heavenly venerable fate-born to have a strong will to survive in the first place. Otherwise, he would have long since advanced to the Tao integration, and according to reason, it was impossible for him to survive. Heavenly Venerable, you are definitely a ferocious person. Previously, you fought against 11 heavenly venerables of the foreign realm alone. You will definitely be able to overcome this small difficulty, the large black dog murmured, encouraging the heavenly venerable fate-born. Heavenly Venerable, you are a prodigy of all ages. Now, this chaos is still waiting for you to deal with it. You definitely have to come back to life. Now, Ling Han and the large black dog could only wait. 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. The only thing that comforted them was that Tianxing's body was slowly recovering, and the wounds that had been inflicted by the Black Tower were healing. This might be hope, but it was also possible that Tianxing's physique was just so strong, and he would still have this ability even after death. Another 3,000 years passed, and Tianxing's fingers suddenly twitched slightly. The large black dog was immediately surprised and delighted, but was also filled with worry. This could be the heavenly venerable fate-born coming back to life, or it could also be that Tianxing hadn't died at all, and was just rejoicing for nothing. Ling Han also came over. In these years, he hadn't wasted any time, and had always been cultivating. He wanted to reach the peak stage of the ninth heaven as soon as possible. In terms of body techniques, he had also improved significantly. With the support of heavenly venerable level symbols, his cultivation speed was very fast. Tian Sheng's eyelids moved slightly and then opened. That was a clear gaze, and there was a domineering aura that looked down on the world, as well as absolute confidence. More so, there was a kind of concern that bemoaned the state of the universe and pitted the fate of mankind. It definitely wasn't Tian Sheng. It was clearly the same face, the same body, but because of the change in the gaze, it gave off a feeling that it was as if he were a completely different person. Heavenly venerable. The large black dog called out in a trembling voice. The greater the hope, the more afraid he was of failure. That's me. Tian Sheng nodded. At this moment, it was most likely not Tian Sheng, but the heavenly venerable fate-born. Ling Han laughed loudly. Congratulations, master. He offered the black tower with both hands. This treasure had accompanied him for many years, from when he was weak to when he was strong, and only left him when he became a celestial king. Now, he was already a ninth heaven celestial king, and the divine demon sword had also become a heavenly venerable treasure. He had already walked on his own path. Chapter 2730. The heavenly venerable origin-born sighed ruefully. He had chosen to merge with the Tao, and sealed the passageway between the two realms. He had never thought that he would come back to life one day. He took the black tower and gently rubbed it. He had thousands of words to say, but in the end, they all turned into a sigh. Thank you for your hard work. He nodded at Ling Han and the large black dog. Master, let's go back, Ling Han said. They had already been outside for several thousand years, and had experienced dozens of attacks from the frenzied army. Thankfully, they had hidden in the Celestial Visitor Inn, and the frenzied army's target was the stronghold. They would not investigate carefully on the way, so there had not been any conflict. Though he had confidence in the Empress and the Rain Emperor, Ling Han still wanted to return as soon as possible. All right. The heavenly venerable origin-born nodded. The two of them and the dog returned to the stronghold. The heavenly venerable origin-born was still adapting to his new body. Heavenly venerable, will this affect your future advancement? The large black dog asked. Even if one was born with a body as strong as divine metal, and who knew how many people dreamed of it, the stronger the body, the more suitable it was for cultivation. Rather, it had to be compatible with the soul first. If it was not compatible, even if he switched to Xan Chihu's body, he would not be able to become a heavenly venerable. The heavenly venerable origin-born nodded. This body was nurtured by heaven and earth, so it is completely compatible with my soul. Furthermore, my body has also comprehended many secrets of heaven and earth from it, and can even skip that unique power of this plane, and advance to become a heavenly venerable with some kind of intrinsic power. This was the same as Ling Han. It couldn't be helped. Born with heaven and earth, it was just that awesome. Back then, he had been incredibly strong when he was born in the number 1 martial arts academy, and now that he had switched to the heavenly venerable origin-born soul, it would only be even stronger. The large black dog howled. Now, he had 2 powerful backers, and only he could bully others. They returned to the stronghold. Strictly speaking, he had not died since birth, and the soul of the heavenly venerable origin-born had always resided in this body. Thus, his identity naturally had not changed. They successfully crossed the city walls, and then Ling Han took his leave to see the Empress. After a few thousand years, the Empress had completely stabilized her cultivation level at the 9th heaven tier, and was steadily advancing towards the middle stage of the 9th heaven tier. When Ling Han returned, the Empress was naturally overjoyed, and embraced and kissed him. Speaking of the resurrection of the heavenly venerate original life, the Empress was also a little happy for Ling Han. Though she was very proud, he was still her husband's master, after all. Furthermore, he had even saved Ling Han twice, so she couldn't help but feel grateful. After the two of them had caught up, Ling Han brought the Empress to see the heavenly venerate of origin born. As they walked down the street, they noticed that the people nearby were pointing at them and whispering to each other. "Are there flowers on my face?" Ling Han asked the queen with a smile. The Empress shook her head. "Although you've been at the top of the current ranking list for the past few thousand years, your battle record has never changed. Thus, it's only natural that countless people doubt your strength." So that was how it was. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. It was true that people who were popular had their fair share of gossip. He didn't believe that no one was in the same situation as him. However, he was the only one who was being harshly criticized. It was because he held the #1 position on the ranking board that he attracted so much criticism. But he didn't care at all. Dignity and prestige were earned through battle. What use could words have? After paying respects to the heavenly venerate original life, his life naturally returned to its normal rhythm. Cultivation. Whether it was Ling Han, the Empress, or the heavenly venerate original life, the path of martial art before them was long and arduous. For the heavenly venerate original life, his path was not a smooth one either. That was because this was the fiery frost plane. He needed to once again sense this unique power in this heaven and earth, and though he said that it was possible that he could grasp one of the 6 essential powers in advance, that was only some confidence. Whether he could succeed or not would still depend on the time. Everyone was cultivating with all their might, but a few years later, the frenzied army attacked again. This time, there was no small-scale probing. The moment they arrived, it was like an avalanche. Only after fighting for a whole 17 days did they manage to stop this wave of attacks. The elites in the city began to counterattack and hunt down those scattered soldiers. Then, a huge piece of news spread, shocking everyone. After so many years, the stronghold had also accumulated enough materials to concoct 3 7 kills 7 violence pill. To 9th Heaven celestial kings or pseudo-heavenly venerates, this was of extraordinary significance. That was because though the frenzied army would bring about massive destruction, those that were mobilized were pseudo-heavenly venerates and 9th Heaven celestial kings, after all. Even if they died, they could still be used to concoct alchemical pills. After accumulating for innumerable years, there were enough materials, and they finally opened the cauldron to concoct alchemical pills. Because the heaven and earth were different, the frenzied army was also very difficult to refine, especially when these creatures contained an incredibly violent factor. It was extremely easy for the cauldron to explode. Thus, it would normally take trillions of years to successfully concoct a cauldron of pills. The 7 kills 7 violence pill was of great help to cultivators, but at the same time, its side effects were also very great. That was because the violent factor was not so easy to refine, and taking it could very easily cause one to become crazy. It was said that one had to survive 7 times of danger, and the danger of becoming violent, before one could digest the benefits of the alchemical pill. This was a good opportunity for one to reach the heavens in a single step. Though it could not allow one to break through the shackles of pseudo-heavenly venerate, it could greatly save one's cultivation time. But there were only 3 7 kills 7 violence pills. Who would they give them to? If it was given to someone, then who would be convinced? Moreover, in terms of relationships, many of the people here were descendants of 3rd and 4th step Empyreans, and even 5th and 6th step Empyreans. None of them could be offended. Naturally, no one wanted to shoulder this burden, so there was another way to solve this problem. Strength was respected. This was the true and unchanging iron law of martial art. The strong possessed everything, and this had been the case since ancient times. Thus, these 3 7 kills 7 violence pills would also be decided through a martial arts competition. But in order to participate in the competition, one had to be in the top 100 of the current ranking list. In addition, there would be 28 special spots, and after repeated rounds of elimination, 3 victors would be decided. This first round had already eliminated 99% of the people here. Wanting to enter the current ranking list was already as difficult as ascending to the heavens, let alone entering the top 100. Everyone here was a master amongst masters, and with time, they could enter the overall ranking list. But the current ranking list was different. It only counted the battle results of the last million years. Those who entered the top 100 naturally didn't have to worry. They only needed to prepare for the battle. The others, on the other hand, stared at the 28 extra slots and began to move. Not long after, these slots were all taken. Ling Han was currently number 1 on the list. At least for the next million years, even if he didn't do anything, he could still stay at the top of the list. It was just that his battle record did not improve at all, which caused everyone to criticize him. Everyone else was fighting a bloody battle, but he entered the qualifier lying down. Who could accept this? There were many people making a ruckus, asking for Ling Han to be stripped of his qualifications. Of course, this was not accepted, but it also proved that Ling Han was indeed not well received. Ling Han couldn't help but ask himself, but he couldn't think of a reason. He could only attribute it to a saying, "Those who don't attract jealousy are mediocre." The Empress, the Rain Emperor, the large black dog, and the heavenly venerable Fate-born had all missed this opportunity. Ling Han was filled with confidence that he would definitely be able to obtain a 7 kills 7 violence pill. However, not all of the rewards would be given to the champion, and he couldn't help but feel that it was a pity. Chapter 2731. Binghe, you've already become a quasi-celestial venerable. It just so happens that I've refined a few 7 kills 7 violence pills in the extraterritorial battlefield, which are extremely beneficial to your cultivation. I've already obtained a spot for you, so you don't need to cultivate in seclusion here. It's time for you to make a name for yourself, said a white-haired old man in a snowy valley. His beard was so long that it reached his chest, but his body seemed to be condensed from light and shadow, not very real. This was because he wasn't a physical entity, but a manifestation of a divine sense. His true body was still fighting in the extraterritorial battlefield. This was an unparalleled figure, because he was able to obtain an extra spot. Was this something that just anyone could do? Yes, master. A young man broke through the layer of ice. His upper body was bare, and his skin was snow-white and as smooth as jade. It reflected light and emitted a gem-like luster. He had a head of waist-length black hair that fluttered in the mountain wind, revealing his face. He was calm, determined, and had an absolute confidence. After the white-haired old man finished speaking, the divine sense disappeared, turning into countless fragments that fell down. The young man looked up at the sky. From today onwards, the legend of me, Tai Binghe, will spread throughout this world. My era has entered. Beside an ocean. Zhangjun, how long have you been with me? Asked a child who was only 6 or 7 years old. He had his hands behind his back, looking like an old man. Behind him was a tall and sturdy young man. His muscles were bulging like rocks. This young man's surname was Qi, and his name was Qi Zhangjun. Master, it's been almost 700 million years, Qi Zhangjun replied respectfully, not at all disrespectful because the other person looked like a child. He knew that this was a mystical art that his master cultivated. Every time he experienced the process of growing from infancy to old age, his cultivation would advance by a level. Up until now, his master had already experienced this 6 times. Celestial Venerable Fengyun, 6 steps. The child in front of him wasn't Celestial Venerable Fengyun's true body, but just his divine sense. Celestial Venerable Fengyun nodded. In the blink of an eye, you've grown from a child to this big. It's all because of teacher's nurturing, Qi Zhangjun said with his head lowered, his eyes full of admiration. In the past, he was just a little beggar wandering the world. How could he have imagined that one day he would become a high and mighty quasi-empyrean? I recently refined a few 7 slaughter 7 violence pills in the foreign battleground. They'll be beneficial to you. Celestial Venerable Fengyun said casually, I've already gotten you a spot to participate in the competition. You can go now and don't need to return. Kill your enemies in the extraterritorial battlefield and strive to break through to the Celestial Venerable realm as soon as possible. Yes, master. Tu family. The Tu family was an old aristocratic family. Their old ancestor was a 6th-step heavenly venerable and could look down on the world. Another 7 kill 7 violent pill has appeared. Hi, too sure, we'll take this opportunity to appear in the world. It's time to let everyone know that other than the 3 dragons, the 2 clan also has a peerless tiger. A young man laughed heartily as he walked out of the mansion and soared into the sky. Zhu family. This was also an old rich and powerful family that had produced a 6th step Empyrean before. However, this big shot had already fallen in the battle with Frenzy. However, the Zhu family still had a 3rd step Empyrean to support the family. On account of the deceased old ancestor of the Zhu family, the various large factions still gave the Zhu family face. It was just that the more favors they used, the less they would use. After all, they could not always play the bitter card of the old ancestor. Yen, you have outstanding talent and might surpass the old ancestor in the future. I hope that you can amaze the world with a single brilliant feat this time and raise the prestige of our Zhu family. In the main hall, a white-haired old man was talking to a young girl. This girl was as beautiful as a peach, but she was as cold as ice. She nodded. 7th uncle, please rest assured. Yen will definitely not disappoint the family's expectations. This time, you must advance into the top 3. In order to obtain this spot, we have used up our last bit of favor. In the future, you will really have to rely on yourself. Yen understands. Illusory Cloud Waterfall, Wu family. This was a famous dangerous place in the Fire Frost Plain. It was located in the boundless sea of stars. A waterfall hung upside down from the depths of the starry sky. Upon closer inspection, one would realize that the surging water was not water, but chaotic chi. Each strand was as heavy as a star and extremely terrifying. The Wu clan was located in the middle of the waterfall. Ordinary people, even initial-stage immortal kings, did not have the qualifications to enter. This was one of the strongest clans in the entire Fire Frost Plain, and even in the Yuan world. That was because the old ancestor of the Wu clan was a 7th step Empyrean. Ha! Amidst a long laugh, a silhouette also emerged from the waterfall. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes shone like light, filled with a tyrannical aura. I, Wu Haoyang, have finally exited seclusion. Right now, no one in the world knows of my name, Wu Haoyang. But it won't be long before my name is known throughout the world. Lin Yolien, Xan Chihu, you two are not the only ones who can communicate with the intrinsic energy of the Yuan world at the 9th heavenly layer. I can do it as well. I will definitely surpass you two and trample all of you beneath my feet. This time's competition in the extraterritorial battlefield will be my, Wu Haoyang's, first battle. Mediocre people, prepare to tremble. There were a total of 28 extra spots for this competition, and because of this, a great many young prodigies were drawn out. Previously, they had either kept an extremely low profile or buried their heads in cultivation, but now, they all swarmed out like a swarm of bees. Yet Ling Han knew nothing about this. He only cultivated every day, waiting for the battle to begin. If he had free time, he would also pay a visit to the heavenly venerable born fate and discuss the next evolution of the indestructible heaven scroll. Now, though the indestructible heaven scroll had the cultivation manual for the heavenly venerable technique, it could not allow the physique of a heavenly venerable to reach the level of devouring metal. This was because of the limitations of the heavenly venerable born fate. At the time, he had only been a first-step heavenly venerable. Moreover, he had died early and did not have that much time. To comprehend a set of cultivation method, geniuses might only need 10 or 100 years, but to create a set of cultivation method, it would take an incomparably long time. Even if they created it, they would need a very long time to adjust it. Ling Han felt that it was a pity that he did not forcefully pull Wally over. Otherwise, with the addition of this master of analysis, it would definitely be of great help. Of course, the discussion of the indestructible heaven scroll would only be carried out when they had free time. At present, for Ling Han, the heavenly venerable born fate, and the others, raising their cultivation level was still the first priority. A month's time passed very quickly, and it was time for the competition to begin. The officials called this competition a small test of skill. Though the participants were basically pseudo-heavenly venerable in the foreign battlefields, they were only considered as bystanders, and could indeed only be called a small test of skill. Ling Han first went to draw lots and then waited for the results. His first opponent was Go Yen, and their battle was also arranged as the first battle. There was no other reason than that Ling Han was currently the current first in the rankings. When everyone finished drawing lots, the battle also officially began. The first battle, Ling Han against Go Yen. This was a slender young man with 2 pupils, 1 gold and 1 silver, exuding a demonic aura. He revealed a smile at Ling Han, but with a strong sense of mockery. Current first in the rankings, hee, I've heard a lot about you. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.